still funding. Hold on there.
No, sad. I'm like, I left myself somewhere.
Hey.
Okay,
So would you like me to share this with you? Or
Okay.
do you want to wait till?
can we wait till later just because they're gonna yell at me if we don't get started? Where is everybody?
Hey, how are you?
Nice to see
Good
you.
to see you too.
Okay, is this mine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just don't wanna be putting my laptop in the wrong bag. Because you'll get home.
Yeah, so I think that's the-
Perfect. The two of us will get it. Kathy has a binder of shots today. She'll have a forum. We have a forum. Recorded, so that's a very good. Right? If we all get lost in the beats.
Is this where I'm sitting today or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Two, 3, 4, 5, we can get this going. We're just missing Mr. Robert, Mr. Garcia. Get going, we have a quorum. All right, why don't we get started? So it's 3:03. We'll call the study session to order. Yeah, so and I'll formally introduce you in a few minutes, but I'll just for the board, Mr. Molina, who has been appointed, he will be appointed by Mr. Watson on Friday. He'll take the oath of office and be able to join us after Friday for a future. We do have, I think, a study session on the 15th, so you'll be able to join and vote. So he's just gonna sit. He can't participate, but he can watch, I guess, just the rules of the game. So we're gonna start with the study session. We have Ms. Mays at the table as our policy representative from the district. And if you want to,
Jennifer McCutcheon, I'm a law professor as a development with the Arizona District.
all right, so what we want to do is we're gonna walk through the policies. And I'm gonna let you lead that discussion. We'll start with chapter 1. You probably have more experience than us, so if however you wanna.
I'd be happy to facilitate. Mr. Straka. So chapter 1, I came out to present to the governing board about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, regarding the policies, and I did a brief overview regarding what each chapter is about. But so you may recall from that chapter 1 is primarily about this governing board. So it reviews items such as your legal description, your rules of order, the open meeting law, items such as that. It also contains all of the EEO policies and the parents' rights. So that's sort of the subject matter of chapter 1. When I worked on these policies with Vicki and Ms. Mays, what we did was we made the district administration has made recommendations within the bounds of the policy for the board to consider. There are some highlights in the policies, and where there is a highlight, it's an area where the administration is seeking feedback from the governing board or where there's been a question. So that's sort of how these are laid out. Is that about right, Ms. Mays? Yes, ma'am. Okay. So we can just kind of start going through. That's okay. I can give you a brief description of what the policies are. So 101 is the boundary policy and the legal description. So I don't think there'd be any changes. And then when you see the next one, 101A is a procedure. So. If it has a letter after it, it's a procedure, so the procedure dictates the boundaries of the different elementary and unified school districts that are part of West-MEC. Policy 1102 lays out the board's authority, responsibility, and immunity. These are all primarily statutorily driven, so there's really no choices for you to make in that.
And can I just, do we want to, if people have questions, do you want us to stop each one? Or I just want to make sure that what is the pleasure of the board, I guess? Do you want to let her go through all of them and then come back and ask questions, or ask them as we go?
Well, will we be able to make any changes or suggest changes and
Yep,
stuff like that?
so that's what I'm like, do you want to do those one at a time, or do you want her to present them all and then come back and walk through through the list, is what I'm trying to get from everybody.
I know we can do it one at a time.
Yeah, okay.
I like the best.
All right, so we're up to 102. So on the first two was 101 and 101A, was there any questions from anybody?
Well, 100, I'd still like to go over 100 because there's some things I'd like to add on there.
So there isn't a current policy 100. You'd like to create one?
Okay, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's 102.
Okay.
Look at that.
Okay, what would you like to see? So 1102 is the policy about board authority, responsibilities, and immunities.
And I'd like to see, to the board, added to the board's responsibilities is to adopt the school calendar and closing or constructing schools. And then on approving district purchases, I would like to add on or take off unless this responsibility has been delegated to the superintendent.
Where you've got that?
And that is approving district purchases. And you had unless the responsibility has been delegated to the superintendent, I'd like to have that stricken.
And if any other board members have additional thoughts, so everyone, could you? I do, if you're done, I have one more.
Okay, let me look here. Okay, and then there's some other things here, board members' request for information. I'd like to have everything stricken after the superintendent's response to such request shall be provided to all board members, and everything else stricken from there.
So if one board member asks for something, I would think that it's of value for all the board members to
It
receive.
should be shared.
So that's what it's saying, I think.
Well, it says also, it says if a board member requests information requiring data collection that is estimated to entail over 2 hours of staff time, the superintendent is authorized to deny the request.
Yeah,
I think if the board member asks for something, it's because they need it.
so I think what that's saying there is it can be denied for an immediate response, but then it would be discussed at the next governing board meeting. Is that the way I interpret that?
That's correct. So this provision is optional. You all can remove it if you want it in its entirety. But the idea is to not permit one board member to garner the time of the administration without the approval of the entire board. So if a board member's request is going to take more than 2 hours of time to fulfill, the entire board would have to approve it. But it's optional language. If we could, before we speak to that, one of the revisions requested is up above in approving district purchases, the removal of the language unless this responsibility has been delegated to the superintendent. In chapter 3, you all will have an opportunity to designate how much money the district can spend without it going to the governing board. The typical amount is $100,000, which is the threshold for when you have to go out to bid for items. You can set that threshold lower if you chose, but if you don't retain this language in there, I would worry that you would be contravening that policy in chapter 3. So it would be my recommendation that you maintain the language unless the responsibility's been delegated to the superintendent. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to purchase a pen without board authority. So I would worry about that. If you do want to if you want to reference the amount that you choose in chapter 3 in this section, we could do that. But I would recommend that you have some delegated authority to the superintendent to purchase.
And I think that's fine. You know, I think 100,000 is typical. I've asked around also from other, where I remember some different districts, and that's pretty much the standard.
Would you be okay with keeping that language because of that concern?
Yeah, and I think just doing the reference like you talked about, fine. We want to talk about the 2-hour rule. I think we should keep that just because I don't want Ms. Wiley to request a bunch of reports from the staff. I think the other thing that it really says here is that all requests from the staff should be directed through the superintendent. But I don't think we should be doing unless we've already started a conversation. So let me give you the example of Ms. Mays. I asked her request. I started that with Scott. He directed it to Ms. Mays, and we're working on that report. But I would request from the board that everything starts with Dr. Spurgeon, because why that's important is you don't want to ask, I don't want to ask Ms. Mays a question that really should go to Mr. Welch. And that way, whatever requests go, they start with Dr. Spurgeon and then they can be distributed. He'll say, hey, Frank, talk to Ms. Mays, or hey, Frank, talk to Mr. Welch. I'm good with a 2-hour limit. If we ask for a report that's going to take more than 2 hours, yeah, Scott, can you tell me what's happened to all the students since the beginning of time of West-MEC? Where are they now? I'd like that by tomorrow. Not gonna happen. Right. I just think 2 hours is a reasonable time. What do you guys think? Do you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I agree with that, and I think that all information requested should go through one person.
And I'm fine with that, you know, except that, you know, it's at someone's discretion what 2 hours consist of. I've asked for stuff and I'm not getting it. And it was already made. So I'm.
This is an easy solution.
Call me if you aren't getting something from Dr. Spurgeon. He has my phone number, I have his phone number. And I'll follow up if I hear that, you know, but if you think it's gonna take a lot of time, I think on the flip side, I would ask that.
And it
Just
is
if we all
already
could,
created.
if we could just all communicate. So I think we'll keep that, is what I'm hearing. We'll keep that wording there.
I'm good.
Anything else?
The communication protocols, I'd like to know, what kind of legal authority that's from?
This is again optional language. This would set parameters, which I think the board is permitted to do. Under both 15.341 and 15.321, it can set the communication parameters that it wants to seek to both promote transparency and to make sure that matters are processed at the lowest level. So it's an operational protocol, again, discretionary to this governing board.
I think it says official communication. That would mean that, hey, the board has decided to close a school. The board has decided to call a bond. It would be then Dr. Spurgeon that would direct that kind of communication.
No, this is about the anonymous communications,
Anonymous?
right? So,
It says we will not consider or refer to anonymous communications.
right. And I think there needs to be a line drawn because sometimes you can tell if it's coming from inside West-MEC and when it's coming from somebody
So
on the streets.
I would agree.
It needs to be
I would, so on that, I would say if there are anonymous communications coming from staff, the first thing I would encourage staff to do is reach out to their leader or reach out to Ms. Mays there are rules about retaliation. That's not allowed. So if they do not, they should use that as a first line of communication. If that hasn't worked, then they could come to a board member and the board member could take the concern. But they cannot anonymously contact the board and say, I have this concern. I don't think that is healthy for an organization. And that's my 2 cents.
Plus, would it be considered?
I have had in the past members call me a couple of times and I just feel like I can't get involved
They need to go, and I would,
through their process.
I think that there are sometimes that they're not comfortable with that process, and I think they need a voice.
it's okay for them to contact you to be a voice, but it's not anonymous.
Mhm.
I would still go back to, that's not an anonymous, this says anonymous communication.
What was the suggestion that you were making, I'm sorry?
I'd like to see something, we need to look into a way for employee to either come to the board and kind of remain anonymous. If they've gone through all the steps, of going through their leadership and stuff like that, and they see something that's going on, or they're a whistleblower or something like that, there needs to be a way for them to come forward and let the board know what's going on.
My question in that situation, I
So we
agree
can
with you.
investigate.
Yeah. How would we know that it's a staff member though, if we're getting the communication anonymously? Would they have to identify themselves somehow for us to determine whether or not?
That's what I'm saying.
At that point, that's not-
Then it's not anonymous.
Then it's
They've
not
identified
anonymous.
Themselves.
There is an entire policy on whistleblowing and checks.
Oh.
Very detailed.
Oh, okay.
Haven't gotten there yet.
No, absolutely, right, that's why I'm here, just to give you
Yeah,
a
no,
preview,
so I
and
think-
tell you how it all fits together.
Anything else?
No, that's it for that policy.
Anybody else? The only thing I had was on page 4. It says recognizing that the superintendent is the designated spokesperson for the district. A lot of different districts have like a chief information or chief, whatever they call the person that talks to the media. Shouldn't we give him the opportunity to delegate that to a spokesperson on behalf of the district as well?
He certainly can. These policies are done in conjunction with a set of definitions that will be published at the same time. I can send those to Louisa and Vicky so that you have access to them by the next board meeting, but one of the definitions is to define the superintendent as including the superintendent or his designee. So anytime it says you'll note that we didn't say superintendent and designee,
Okay.
except in very specific instances, one being about the issuance of preliminary notices, where it calls out that he can designate somebody because of the statute on that. But in general, because that definition will be a part of your policy making, I don't think we need to state that here, but you certainly can.
I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that, then it's only Scott that can talk to the media, which if he wants to delegate, that's fine. That was the only, I think that was the only thing I really had.
It's a good point.
Anything else? We can move on to 103.
Governing board policy, proposed governing board policy 103 is about governing board organization. So this governs your annual organizational meeting in January and the selection of the board chairman. I do want to raise one issue that's been raised by your administration regarding the use of the word chairman. There is a specific statute in the enabling statutes about the creation of career technical education districts that discusses the use of the word chairman. The board shall have a chairman, and that's been the practice and the protocol of West-MEC to date. I do think that you have the ability under 15.321 to use the word president if you chose to do that. I don't know, that's one of the suggestions that's been made by your administration, is to switch to use of the word president and vice president rather than chairman and vice chairman, but that's the board's call.
You know, I would say one of the things I heard, the reason they was chairman was we in our CTEDs work more directly with business and businesses have a chairman. And so it was more of a consistency to show the community that is what my understanding was, is why we had chairman versus president.
From a legal perspective, you can choose either. That issue was just raised and I brought it to your attention.
Anyone have any preference?
No, if it was legally allowed, that's fine, and that's been the practice.
It's
I would
just,
say
different-
keep
it's just different with K-12 comprehensive versus CTED. There's two different legal or statutes that govern how it's organized and what it's called. What's president, what's chairman, vice president, vice chairman.
Yep, no, good. Anything else?
I'm having problems getting on here, so I can look at my policies. I need help.
Did you log in?
I've logged in.
Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at policy bridge.
I know.
You don't need to log in, so it's right here. So if you're looking at joint government, this one, these are all the policies.
Right, I wasn't there though. I was, thank you.
Go, and do you want to make this bigger? Yeah. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Mr. Straka, governing board policy, proposed policy 1104 is about legal advice and representation. So it just takes you through the statutory items regarding the county attorney, the use of outside counsel, initiating lawsuits, obtaining legal advice. It does retain what your existing policy talks about, which is that the superintendent and the board chairman are authorized to communicate with legal counsel, but either can authorize another board member to consult upon request.
Any questions?
Yeah, on this one here, I would like to see that we have an attorney that just is specific to the governing board.
That is,
Yes, that just reports to the.
that is, Susan Siegel is a vote. And if there's a conflict between the district and the board, Susan always represents the board first. So she is the board attorney. And as the policy says, I can consult her at any time as the chairman. And I can direct any other board member to consult her for any policy. And I think that's how we operate today. And I think that's what the policy says.
Policy does not, certainly doesn't limit your ability to employ my partner, Ms. Siegel, or anyone else as board counsel.
And we always have had a board attorney that represents the board first. As an example, Susan represents the board, and Greg, when he was renewing his contract one year, tried to hire her. And he had to hire a separate attorney because she represented the board.
So their fiduciary responsibility is to us first.
Well, any attorney that represents West-MEC, the responsibility is to the district as a whole. In certain occasions, an attorney is, it's more, the service needs to be only to the governing board, such as the example that Mr. Straka got when you're doing contract negotiations with the superintendent. Another example might be if you undertake an opportunity to expel a student, representation may have to be only of the governing board, not of the district administration and the board. So there are certain instances in which that representation does need to be separate. But in general, most attorneys that would represent West-MEC can represent and assist the district administration and the governing board at the same time.
Well, recently we had a discussion that the board could use other attorneys also. That as long as they were approved by the trust.
They're on the plus prepaid list.
Correct. Like Bernie Calder on there.
The governing board retains authority under this policy to hire who it wants as its counsel if it needs its own attorney.
Cause I'd almost like to see, I'd like to see that happen.
And that's more of a question about how you operate than about the policy. In other words, I don't think there needs to be different language in this policy to effectuate that, if that's the choice of the board.
I don't hear any other changes. Should we move on? 105?
Governing Board Policy 1105 is about board member conflict of interest. This is all statutory. So statutory language taken from Title 38 about what is a conflict of interest. What is, how you can be employed as a former board member, mandatory disclosures and conflict of interest forms.
So on this, like the conflict of interest, this, when we have something come up and a board member is going to abstain, do they need to declare a conflict of interest or they just abstain and remain quiet?
Good question, Mr. Straka. If they have a conflict of interest, they have an actual statutory conflict of interest. So I'll pick on Mr. Miglerino for a minute. Let's say he owns a portion of Chase Construction and that company comes before the board. He should declare his conflict in writing and he should refrain. And when he abstains from voting, he would state it and that would promote transparency. But, board members may also abstain from voting if they feel they don't want to vote on a matter or they choose not to use their elected responsibilities as a part of the board. They may choose to abstain in an instance where there isn't an actual statutory conflict.
Okay, but if I have, so if I believe I have a conflict of interest, I should not participate in the discussion, declare the conflict of interest and step away.
Correct.
And at the beginning of each year, the business office sends a
Yeah,
form around that you
because we had
sign.
some questions about that. And I think you answered, it's like if you have the 3% interest in a publicly traded company, then you're considered a substantial interest.
But I'd also like to see added on that,
I like to go directly from straight state statute and include everything on there instead of just picking and choosing. The state statute says board member relative means the spouse, child's child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister, or the whole or half blood and their spouses and the parent, brother, sister, or child of the spouse.
So the section regarding board member relatives discusses and references the state laws. I don't know which law you're reading from, but it does reference those and those will be linked. So it's not, when we created the policy manual, and it may not be linked in the Word document that we have, maybe, let's see, woohoo, look at that. So you will be able to reference exactly what the statute says from the policy manual. We tried to be succinct in our drafting so as not to cut and paste from the state law into the policies, but you have the absolute ability to do that. So if you want to do that, we can
I think
add.
that would make it very clear.
Okay, so what statute are you reading from?
I believe it was from that 38-502. I didn't write it down. Oh, here, wait a second.
Oh, that's the one at the bottom.
38-502-9.
So you just had 502 up there. Right there, bottom of the page. Next one down.
15-502?
Yeah.
No, the state statute is 38-502-9, just like you had
38.
referenced at the top under definitions.
So what you want to see is the defining of who is a relative.
Okay, so we just would add that.
I will look and see if it's in Title 38 or Title 15. It may actually be both places. And I also believe that there's some reference in AG opinion on that issue, but I'll add that. That consensus of the board to add that?
Yes.
Also, employment of former board member. This language applies to small schools. West-MEC is not a small school.
What policy are you on?
Looking at employment of a former board member pursuant to ARS 15-421E, the district may employ directly or through a third-party contractor an individual who has served as a governing board member during.
So the section E is referring to a substitute teacher. So the portion about employing board members as a substitute teacher does only apply to small school districts.
So the example we had was Charlie Ellis was a board member. He saw there was gonna be no construction trades program. So he resigned from the board and took that job.
So I believe it was last year, the legislature added two provisions in the statute that you're talking about, 15-421. One was only for small school districts, and that's if you want to hire a former board member as a substitute teacher. The second provision is provision F, and that's for any school district. A school district may employ, including employment through a third-party contractor, a person who served as a member of the governing board during the preceding 2 years, only in a position in which the person will provide services directly to students. So that language that is in the proposed policy does mirror statute.
Okay, because I was looking at 15-421D. It says an employee of a school district, including a person who directly provides certified or classified services to the school district as an employee of a third-party contractor or the spouse of such an employee may not hold membership on the governing board of a school district by which the employee is employed.
Right, that's an existing board.
Yeah.
The
Right,
policy is
and
talking
that's,
about former board members. Employment of former board members.
okay, can you read F to me again? Sure. Or can we maybe put it up on the?
I don't think that particular statute is linked, but it's ARS 15-421, paragraph F. A school district may employ, including employment through a third-party contractor that provides services to a school district, a person who served, past tense, as a member of the school district's governing board during the preceding 2 years, only in a position in which the person will provide services directly to students, including a certificated teacher, substitute teacher, or an employee or contractor who provides transportation, instructional support, or student support services. A school district may increase this time period prescribed in this subsection to be more than 2 years. So in the proposed policy, we have mirrored the statute, which is during the preceding 2 years, but you could make it longer than that if you wanted.
So as an example, I couldn't resign and become assistant superintendent.
Correct.
But if I did resign, West-MEC could hire my wife to work in the district
Or you
or me
as a teacher.
as a teacher, but not as the assistant superintendent.
Correct.
Because I think EVIT did that. They had a board member resign and become assistant superintendent. So that's why
Maybe
that's
the
a lot.
anti-EVIT rule, I don't know.
There it is.
Yeah, I don't have to make the sausage, I just have to interpret it.
Okay, so any further questions, Linda?
Let's see here. Yes, let's see here. Moving down from that, in accordance with ARS 15-323 and ARS 38-503. A board member shall not participate anymore regarding any transaction or approval of a vendor in which a board member, it has a substantial interest, blah, blah, blah. But under 2A, it goes in accordance with ARS 15-323 B and C. The district may make purchases from a board member only if all the following conditions have been met. And then you've got the purchase amount is less than $10,000. I think that needs to be stricken. And go according to state statute, which says does not exceed $300. And the total purchases of any board member does not exceed $1,000 in a year. I think when you have something that high, that's a conflict of interest.
All right, so.
Anyone gonna be selling anything to the district between $300 and $10,000?
T-shirts, maybe.
I can't think of one that, I just can't think of what that would be. Would that affect travel reimbursement? Because you're not purchased, that would, because that's not even.
No, this is-
This is about when you're purchasing directly from a board member, and if you give me a minute, there are two choices there. One is the language that you are reading from 15.323 regarding the $300 limit, and the other is a $10,000 limit that is permitted in some instances. So let me just pull this up real quick and see. So if you have fewer than 3,000 students, our sample policies talk about being able to do the $10,000 limit.
Right.
The other, so are you in it? Are you below 3,000?
Oh, no,
No? Okay. All right, then we need to change that. So
thank you.
I'll make that change.
Where was that $10,000 amount from?
I am looking it up and I'm not quite sure, but
So
if it's for when school districts are underneath that $3,000 amount, it may be set in the USFRs, I'm not sure.
Because I don't see that in the stretch.
Well, we're gonna go back to what the statute says anyway, so that's already done for the next time.
Can we move on to, well, 105, Ms. Migliorino, you already covered conflict of interest.
So,
Any other questions on 105, or we can jump to 201?
Okay, one of the things that I am seeing here is, a lot of our policies have been changed to fit in the new regulation, the new federal regulation of Title IX. We have more than 22 states, and I'm sure Arizona will be the next one. As well as our, state superintendent definitely will not follow these rules for the new regulations. It is a war against women, who we really have to check and see what we're doing here. So I'd like to see some of these things, you know, this sexual orientation, gender, genetic code and stuff like that be taken out. We can leave the Title IX stuff in there. But I'm sure this is gonna go all the way up to the Supreme Court, because it will be fine. And not to say that, you know, these people, you know, that somebody has gender dysphoria or whatever, they need to be represented, but it needs to be done in a proper manner. And so, with our state superintendent is not gonna, you know, even look at this or comply, I don't think we should either. And with that, I'd like to also put in our physical privacy policy that we had before.
We have that somewhere in the policies. So
Okay, what chapter is it?
I think in chapter 5, yeah, it's with students. Chapter 5.
And so on that, does that mean when we define sex based on our bathroom policy, we would follow that as how we determine sex, which I believe it's birth certificate?
So we're to the EEO section of chapter 1. There are 3 policies in chapter 1 that govern. This first policy is equal educational opportunity for students, and it covers, this is not your Title IX policy, which is 1203. So 1201 is the anti-discrimination laws, federal and state for students. 1202 is anti-discrimination laws, federal and state for staff. And then 1203 is your Title IX. As you've noted, There has been a Title IX regulation update that has been issued by the federal government. It is under challenge. We have not revised our policy to incorporate those new concepts within the regulation because it's not yet effective. It won't be effective until August 1st. Correct. So, so if with respect to the definition of the portion of the policy that we're looking at 1201, this was written by the law firm Udall Shumway to incorporate state and federal law as it exists. The parenthetical about including sexual orientation and gender identity comes from the decisions that have been issued in those cases by the US Supreme Court. I have had other districts remove that language in this policy, so it just says sex, and the interpretation of a discrimination claim based on sex would be as determined under case law. This board could go down that path if they want, or they could be more specific and leave the language in as written. So that's.
Definitely don't think we should leave the language, and it's written, but you know, when it talks about the federal laws and rules and stuff like that. And regulations, I would like to see that stricken along with executive orders. With respect to the provision of equal educational opportunities. I'd like to see that stricken and also. A little bit further after parenting and sex, including sexual orientation and gender. And then genetic code. In fact, I don't mind if gender is in there, to be real honest with you. I don't care about that, but you know, you start splitting hairs when you start talking about their sexual orientation and genetic codes and stuff like that. I don't even know what that means.
Genetic code comes from a specific federal statute.
Mm-hmm.
So GINA is the statute, GINA.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest you keep that in. I'd suggest you adopt it as written, but it's your call and up for discussion.
Pleasure of the board. Juan, you're the lawyer here.
I just want to try to remember a situation where I've heard genetic code being a source of discrimination. I can't think what was the case on that. I'm curious to know. I mean, I can look at it, look for it afterward, but. Are we okay on keeping this one the way it is, but 203 is the one that we're more concerned about? The use of gender and sex?
I'm looking at all of them. It's 1-201. You know, I'd like to remove including sexual orientation and genetic code.
So the relevant statute on the genetic code is Title II of the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, GINA, which is got information on the EEOC's website. Discrimination because of genetic identity. The law forbids discrimination on the basis of genetic information when it comes to employment. So that's where that's from. Left.
I don't see any instance in where the district would be collecting somebody's genetic code to make a
Well,
decision.
yeah, and in the first paragraph too, I really would, like I said, after it says the district shall abide by all applicable state and federal laws, rules, and then I'd like to scratch regulations and executive orders with respect to the provision of the equal educational opportunities, since it is being contested. No, that's mine.
I would agree with striking that rules, regulations, and executive orders.
So in other words, if we put in these rules and regulations, the executive orders, that means we'd have to abide by what.
Our current administration. Yeah.
Yes, I think we should steer as far away from there as we possibly can.
So we'll strike that based on Luan and Linda's recommendation.
Asked a legal question for Jennifer.
If we do strike applicable state and federal laws, rules and regulations, and a regulation comes out and we don't follow it because we don't have it in our policy, would that open us up to any potential litigation?
So if a administrative regulation is promulgated and is appropriately promulgated, such as the new FLSA regulations that have come out, they were challenged once as not being appropriately promulgated. Now that we believe that they are, they're set to go into effect on January 1st. They're going to increase who and who isn't exempt in your district. So yes, you would be at risk. For instance, if you ignore those and don't pay overtime to people who are now non-exempt, you would be at risk. So the answer is yes. Again, these are your policies. They're your risks to take. My advice is to keep this language as is. And I've told you what other districts have done in terms of the definition of sex. But I have not had of the 14 that have adopted or we're gonna have 42 online by July 1. I haven't had any other district strike language in that first sentence about the rule, regulations and executive orders.
Okay, not the rules, everything after that, I would, even if we just struck regulations and executive orders, just strike that.
So examples of regulations that you'd be striking would be the
Like
entirety of IDEA regulations. You know, most of IDEA, the interpretation of that statute under federal laws in the CFRs. So again, you have to abide by what the state and federal laws are, regardless of whether it's in your policy to the point of not, but if you want to strike any words in there, the word rules and the word executive orders, those would be less risky than striking the word regulations.
So what you're saying is that this new Title 9 regulation with this language in our policies, that we would have to abide by that, is what you're saying?
You have to abide by federal regulation regardless of whether it's in your policy or. So you're,
What if we don't? What if we don't abide by it?
well, I mean, then you've got risk, you may get sued on it, you may not. So my example that I gave that's less, that's more concrete than the Title IX regulations would be the new FLSA regulations that are gonna come out in January that require you to look at upping how much somebody makes in order to categorize them as exempt. And if you didn't abide by that regulation, you'd be at risk for paying overtime to those people that you didn't correctly categorize. That's an example.
It's federal.
Federal. The Title IX is also federal.
Maybe they just take some money away or something.
Well, you could get sued.
Now, West-MEC doesn't get federal funding.
Yeah, we do.
What do we get?
Perkins dollars,
No, we don't have Perkins. Perkins ended in 2018.
Grants, is it the ESSER grants?
ESSER.
Most of the statutes aren't tied to funding. Most of the federal laws that we're talking about here, specifically in the anti-discrimination case, are not tied to, they're tied to the idea of state commerce, not federal funding.
Okay, so we're not.
So it's not gonna matter. It's still gonna apply.
I would still like to strike regulations and executive orders.
The new Title IX change, that's a rule, right? Not a regulation. Is there a change?
It's gonna be in the CFRs.
Going to be in the same. Okay.
More and more, every single day, more states are challenging it.
Then I could ask which executive orders or regulations you don't follow. But I guess I don't know which ones you may be speaking of.
Is the new regulation where it says that we have to take into consideration, anybody that has, gender issues or trans, all that, so that if we have to look at that and say that they have their rights, that means that they can use any bathroom they want because they think they're a man, thinks that they're a woman. I've seen so many schools have so many problems with that, and it doesn't end well. And it throws back women's rights 50 years just right out the window, so that we can accommodate 2% and 50% of the population just goes, who cares? It's not right, and that's why they're challenging it in court, and I'm sure it will go to the Supreme Court.
So if we leave it in. What happens?
Again, you have to follow the state federal regulations or subject yourself to risk.
So whether it's there or not, we gotta follow the state regulations.
It would, again,
It's
be-
not a problem.
But we don't have to follow executive orders until they're
Yeah.
law.
I don't know about that. My understanding from COVID is that if the governors I haven't had a lot of experience about executive orders other than what happened in COVID. And I did understand that they had the ability to enforce those. It didn't happen in the school district setting, but for instance, with the gyms, they went down and shut down the gyms. So I don't really know about that, to be honest. But
To also open us up, when we send our students, and they have their, overnight, over a weekend and stuff like that to do school skills USA or whatever. If somebody thinks that they're, that a boy is a girl and they want a room with somebody, that it just opens up so much that we don't even need to be looking at.
With this rule, are we able to avoid something like that? How would we avoid something like a situation like that?
are we talking about the rooming situation?
Yeah, room situation,
Well,
bathroom
think,
situation.
again, I think your policy that you adopted in chapter 5, with regard to separating by sex is pretty specific, so.
Privacy.
Oh, okay.
The bathroom privacy, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the privacy. I only
It's-
got
it's
into
just-
page 30 of chapter 3.
You're lengthy. Chapter 5, it cuts and pastes it exactly, so it's your policy
Okay.
that you have.
So that would protect us. That would basically cover our concern that we're having here about members from the two sexes sharing a bathroom
Again,
or
that
gym.
policy is specific, how that interrelates to the new Title IX regulations, I don't know, but your policy is specific.
And what trigger attention to that would be if a student felt that they weren't given that right, then they would go to the media or something like that and really cause a fuss, right?
That is always a
Or a parent.
concern or a risk,
Say
right? I
something.
mean, there's a whole host of federal litigation about this issue, right? There's cases all over the board that go both ways about what you have to accommodate and how you accommodate it. So I don't know when this issue will be solidified in terms of the governing law. So,
Well, I think it needs to be addressed because nobody needs to be discriminated against, but
and that's
you
what,
have to do it in the right manner.
sure.
So what did we decide?
So if there's anything we can strike on that first sentence, what would you recommend?
Executive person.
I honestly, if you're asking my opinion, I think you're pretty safe striking the word rules and striking the executive orders. So it would just say you're gonna abide by all applicable state and federal laws and regulations.
Okay.
I'll go with that.
And remainder, okay, or are we changing?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Anything else, or can we move on to the next one?
This is your, again, I described that there are 3 anti-discrimination policies. The next policy, is one governing equal employment opportunities. So this goes through harassment, sexual harassment.
So this is 1-201A.
That's procedure.
That's the procedure, so we bumped
Can I
down to
just
the
real quick
policy.
on that one procedure, we have Shelley, Tom and Kathy Mays listed. Can we just list the position? Otherwise, anytime someone, we shouldn't have specific names in it.
Somewhere else.
It is a procedure, so the superintendent can alter procedure without board approval. the specific laws want there to be the person listed and how you get a hold of them. So I would recommend that you keep this. And I do understand it's a pain and you have to switch it out, but this should be easier to switch out than.
Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about 120(1)(a), correct procedure?
And that's one that Dr. Spurgeon can update without board approval, just because it's a procedural item.
Okay, there's a couple things that I'd like to see stricken on here. When it comes down to, B, application. It's right under all the titles that it lists.
That we're in 120(1)(a).
Page 15. Yeah, 201(a),
Okay. And what section?
and B, application.
Okay.
I'd like to see genetic code stricken, including sexual orientation and gender identity. Needs to be stricken in that.
Okay, again, I don't think we made those changes in the policy, or I didn't hear consensus about making those changes in the policy. This follows the policy. It's my recommendation that you maintain the words genetic code because of that federal law. If you want to remove the word sexual orientation and gender identity in both places, I can do that.
I definitely would like to have, but I'd like to have genetic code. Why wouldn't we do the genetic code step again?
Because of again, I'm just making recommendations. I don't care what you do, but if the GINA
Again, it's
protects genetic code, the EEOC protects genetic code, policies are written to comply with federal law. I would maintain that language in your policy. That's my recommendation. I'm happy to remove whatever language you want me to remove.
Can I ask another legal clarification? So we're talking about discrimination against these
Correct.
parties. We're not talking about whether we agree or disagree or how we feel about, one group or the other. We're basically just saying as a district, as an employer or as a teacher or an administrator, we will not discriminate. So some of the conversations that we're having about the various individuals that are covered under that policy, basically we're saying that we're not gonna discriminate against them. Not that we agree with their lifestyle or we agree with, their orientation. We're just saying we are taking the stance that that's not okay. So I just wanted to clarify that it's a discrimination policy.
Correct.
Yeah.
All of those items are protected, what are called protected categories: race, color, religion, disability.
Discriminate.
Yeah, exactly. Just like
We
bring
won't
legal
discriminate,
defense.
let them read it.
Instead of having, mom and pop and your uncle and your, whatever.
We won't discriminate.
I guess I just worry about, so this is an extreme example, but let's say I were to shirt to class that says God created me a man. Somebody's transitioning from man to woman, test day. I now sue the school because Frank wore this shirt, it distracted me, I failed the test.
So
What happens?
I mean, that's a very specific example. What should happen would be the person that felt that they were discriminated against would file a complaint, not under this policy, because we're talking about employees at this point, but under the student policy, and that would be investigated. And if they found it to be discriminatory, or they found that shirt to be in violation of your dress code, there would be discipline taken. So
That's their freedom of religion. So we can't discriminate against religion.
We're not discriminating, period. No, we don't.
I just worry that we're creating so many rules that there's always an excuse for somebody.
If you create so many rules that you turn around and eat yourself.
That's what I don't want to have happen. So as long as we just keep it, we're not gonna discriminate. I just don't want it to be so and complicated and antiseptic that nobody can do anything because they don't feel comfortable.
So that's all we say. We don't discriminate, period.
Procedures apply to grievances.
Let them read into it.
Alleging discrimination, period.
I'm lost and not
Okay.
confused
So,
about what the
okay.
consensus of the board is. So if we go back to the language at 1201, which is the first of the anti-discrimination policies, it lists the protected categories. which include the person's race, color, religion. The reason it lists the protected categories is because these policies were drafted by Udall Shumway in light of policies that have been approved by the Office of Civil Rights as policies that are going to be compliant with state and federal law. So that's the purpose, is to make you compliant with state and federal law. I do not recommend that you remove the protected categories being listed. The discussion that we've had is removing the words genetics, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and I'll do whatever the board wants me to do, but I need direction from the entirety of the board. If you want to remove those items,
Currently, those we are not protected classes,
they are.
well then, I guess we would have to keep them.
They are. Again, the parenthetical after the word sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, is from the Bostock decision. So,
But we could just say,
sex. And others have done that.
I'd like to keep it as limited as possible. And just say that we just don't discriminate.
Based on sex. Cause that's one of the protected classes.
If we don't discriminate, we've included everything.
I think you would be at risk if you adopted a policy that didn't list out the protected categories, because you're not informing those who would be subject to these policies about what they are protected.
And by now, that's pretty much boilerplate language, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna sit here as a board litigate every single term that's on here, I mean, unless somebody has a problem, then they can initiate a civil action, but otherwise.
So I guess it comes down to, do you wanna keep the parents
Parents,
after sex or not? Just, what's the consensus of the board?
So do it up to sex period.
yeah, I think that's what other boards have done, just limited to
Well,
that.
at least
and-
that'll be a little better.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
there's your direction, I think everybody's good.
Jennifer, are there any regulations at all that would require us to have this in our policy? Or as I said, in other states, like for accountability purposes and regulations, we had to have this in the policy.
So again, I am comfortable with you including that you do not discriminate on the basis of sex and allowing how you define sex to be interpreted as per the courts, per federal regulations, per state law.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. It is spelled out because that's what we know, that if you got an OCR challenge in your district on this, in all likelihood, the Office of Civil Rights would ask you as part of the remedy to put that language in there. So we put that language in there kind of as a first, defense. But if you want to have it just say the word sex, I can make that uniform change. So where we've spelled out sexual orientation and gender identity, I will remove that language. So that would include in 1201.
And students, can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Because we do adult education, do we need to put age in there? Because age is a protected class over 40.
So the age, so you do adult education.
So would students have a right for no age discrimination? Do we have to put that in there? I guess that's the question.
We have the word age in the in the equal employment policy. We don't have it in.
As a K-12, you wouldn't have a 40-year-old student, but
Yeah,
we have adult ed, and so do we need that in there?
I think that's a good add. Okay, and add it.
Right, anything else? Are we up to 202 yet?
Okay, so 1202 is the equal employment opportunity discrimination, non-discrimination policy. I'll make the same change that there's parenthetical there that talks about including gender, pregnancy, sexual orientation, and gender identity. I'm gonna add the word pregnancy because that is also a separate protected category. We're removing that parenthetical. And this is the policy that would cover harassment, cover sexual harassment,
genetic information.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we could, get that removed.
Request
What
is-
do what do we have to have? Let's put it that way.
Again, these policies are written to comply with state and federal law, so my recommendation would be that you adopt as is. My recommendation is that you retain the anti-genetic information because of the GINA, that act. I also recommend down where you've got sexual harassment, it says that covers based on those individuals' sex. Thank you. So, one more, where it says sex or, sorry, a little bit up, Lisa, thank you. Sex or gender, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, gender identity. I would recommend that we include sex, gender, or pregnancy.
Let's just do that. And then scratch the rest of it. And then under harassment, are we gonna do that as well?
Yeah, so I do recommend when you're talking about the sexual harassment that you include the word gender. Which,
Gender, okay, including gender and pregnancy.
Right.
Let's scratch the sexual orientation and gender identity.
Can I ask a legal question, clarifying question, Jennifer? So by striking, and I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse, but by striking things like sexual orientation and gender identity, if, for example, an employee was being harassed because of their sexual orientation, because people say you're gay, or, you know, have questions about their lifestyle and they make negative comments or something like that, would that bar any action being taken? I mean, there are other rules that will follow under in terms of employee conduct if it was employee to employee, but by doing that, would that preclude any harassment or
so again,
charges or something?
it depends on how you interpret sex. If you're interpreting sex as the Supreme Court has, it would encompass both
So it
sexual
includes
orientation
that?
and gender
Okay.
identity.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
In removing those terms or any of these terms, does it offer the board or the district any protection? Or would it,
I think it goes the opposite way.
yeah. That's what I thought. I mean, we still have to follow state and federal law, and we can't discriminate based on any of these.
Still doing it.
Yeah. Doesn't give us license, obviously, to discriminate on any of these that we remove. So,
And as a board, I mean, I think we're really clear. We just want to educate kids. We don't care about their lifestyle, but we're not gonna
yeah,
micromanage that. We just
That's it. I think
treat
that's it.
kids like kids.
It's really, I don't care what you are, you know, that's your free will.
Don't discriminate.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll make the similar changes on 1202.A and 1. So we're down to 3, which is the proposed Title IX policy.
One other, you're gonna shoot me, but one other change.
I'm not gonna shoot you.
202A. When we're talking about uniformed services, the way it's written, it says past, comma, current, comma, or prospective service and the uniformed services. It's really confusing that those three go together, so I was gonna suggest you do uniformed services and then in parentheses say past, current, or prospective.
Sure.
It just, I think that clarifies it a little better because past what?
Are you okay if I add the word uniformed military services? Okay, that's me.
No, 203A.
The 1203 is the Title IX policy, proposed Title IX policy. Again, this has not been revised with respect to the new federal regulations that have been promulgated but are not yet effective. So this is based on. You'll note here, Mr. Straka, that we have listed, because this is in policy and not procedure, we've just listed the person, we've listed the position, not
saw
the
that.
person.
Okay, anything on 203, Mr. Miglerino? I'll start with you this time. Anyone else? One, Barbara? Mr. Garcia? My only, and this is more of my general comment, it says unwelcome based on a reasonable person. That is such a subjective term of what would be unwelcome to a reasonable person. I get very concerned that how do we define what would be unwelcome to a reasonable person?
I understand that is the language of the courts, not my language.
I know, I just. How do you define that? It's.
You get an attorney.
Yeah. Anything else on 203? Two oh three is procedure. I think we can keep going because I didn't hear anything on 203.
This policy 1301 is your rules of order. So these mirror your current rules of order.
One thing on, going back, it says 5 school days on that 203A. We have multiple calendars. How do we define which 5 school days?
In my opinion, that would be any day that any of your districts are in session. So, but I'll make a note in the definition section to define that in that unit.
And then the other thing I've seen, and this is more of a general comment, if you could help clarify. In some places I see advance notice of 24 hours. Then one of the policies says advance notice 24 hours, Saturdays apply, but Sundays don't. And then others are business days. Is there a reason all the statutes have a different flavor of notice of?
I don't know. We tried when we were creating the policies to specify if it's a calendar day or a business day. The definitions talk about what is a business day. There are some, the statutes are all over the board with that. So for instance, when you terminate a teacher, their termination is effective 10 days after the service of a statement of charges, but it doesn't tell you if it's business or calendar. So it's one example. But you have 45 school days to give a teacher to improve their performance, and it's very specific that it's 45 school days. So I don't know why the legislature does what it does. We definitely mirrored it in our policies.
Okay, so
And
that's
some
fine.
of it is discretionary. So that like these 5 days that you're talking about, I would have to go back to the regulations to see if that's discretionary or by the meeting. So what you really need is to be specific enough in your policy so that everybody knows what the rules are.
Like 3 calendar days, so if we tell someone the day before Thanksgiving. And there's a 3-day calendar notice, you're kind of shafted. because it doesn't say anything about holidays, so as long as that we're fine with that, I just. And in other places, it does say business days, and that's where I just, so you're saying the legislature does what they do and it's just the way it works.
But I think it will be helpful to you, and we can pull them up on the trust website, the definition section. We'll make sure that it's West-MEC specific with regard to the defining of school days, because you do have different calendars. But I'll make sure that everybody has a copy of that for the next study session.
Anything else?
What are we on? 1301 now?
Yes.
I don't have anything for that one.
That's pretty much everybody in my routine, right before we start our work session.
Do you have anything for 1301?
425, wherever we're at. So just as we're running on time, we'll stop at 425. And we'll have made progress to wherever we're at, and then we'll pick up next Wednesday. So Melina, you'll get to engage in this fascinating conversation.
4 o'clock next week.
4 o'clock.
How exciting.
4 o'clock next week.
We'll probably be through chapter 1.
And according to Mr. Miglarino, we'll probably have more left, but
Okay, so no changes on 1301. 1302 is the governing board's requirements regarding open meeting law. Again, this is entirely statutory.
Yes.
and Louisa, you'll give Mr. Molina the open meeting law.
We have a orientation scheduled for Tuesday.
This is all statutorily required and taken from that. 1303 regards the adoption of board policies.
Anybody else got anything?
No. And there's on the one, the posting but excludes Sundays and other holidays.
So this policy says specifically that, we're talking about 1303, that the board, are you still on the prior?
I was
Get to it.
302.
No problem.
What page is that on that you're looking at?
Page 39. Number 5.
Okay, so that's in line with state law.
Saturdays, but not Sundays.
Yep. State law.
So on 40, under board meeting agendas. Number 4. I know we stick to our agendas strictly. This one says generally. Generally, the board may discuss, consider, make decisions only to those matters listed on the agenda. Want to narrow that or just keep it as a generalization?
We're keeping it.
I know we really try to stick to that agenda as a practice.
Because otherwise it's an open meeting law violation.
So that violates the open meeting violation.
Yeah.
This is generally.
I mean, do we even need number 4? I think is what Mr. Garcia is asking.
I'm fine with striking the word generally or striking the whole thing.
Let's try the whole thing. We don't need it.
I'm good striking the whole thing.
Simple.
Else? I do know that we already have a policy that says the time limit for public speaker or for call to the public is 3 minutes per person, I think. And here it says the chairman may set a time limit.
You want to put 3 minutes in here, we can put it in here.
So you could say we'll set aside 20 minutes for this.
It's already in policy. It's like 3 minutes and 30 minutes, or 30 and 30 total or something. Right? 3 minutes per person and 30 per topic or something.
Procedure, I think it might be
It
procedure.
might be a procedure, you're right. So do we leave that procedure in that way?
We don't have that in the current procedure, so we'll need to add that.
Okay.
So, Louisa or Vicky, can you send me what your current procedure is on that, please? And again, the administration's included all the procedures so that you can see them, but what you really will be adopting when you move to adopt are just the policies. So we're on 1303, which is exactly what we're doing, adoption of policies and review. We do have in here that you would have discretion to adopt policies on one read or two read at your discretion.
This, it's just like 1 read, 2 read. We can change the rules if we want.
Just be Chair.
And then that other one says 3 working days. Could we just, if we can there, change that to 3 business days? Or 3. On item 2, minutes of the recording shall be within 3 working days.
Are you back up in?
The after meeting minutes, I'm on page 42. Page 42, item 2.
Yep, I made the change.
Can we get through 303 really quick? You have 2 minutes.
Question on this one. So if we're gonna adopt, revise, or suspend something, do we have to call, I guess, put it on the agenda for a subsequent meeting or hold a emergency meeting or? Cause we wouldn't be, I couldn't just bring it up in the middle of a general meeting, correct?
Correct, yeah, it'd have to be on the agenda.
That'll be on the agenda.
So could you bring it up if it was related to a topic we were discussing?
Well, if you're gonna take action to suspend your own policies, it would have to be agendized so the public would know that you're taking that action. I'll give you an example. When this is used, a lot of times you'll suspend, you currently have a policy that requires 2 reads, but sometimes you'll suspend that policy and adopt a policy in 1 reading. So that's one example. Where I've seen districts take action to suspend the implementation of, a certain policy that applies to students, for example. So, but I think you would have to agendize it to be open meeting law compliant.
Got it.
Anything else, sir?
Nope.
Anyone else? Okay, so why don't we break there?
We've got one more policy to do,
Oh,
and then you're done with
she's-
chapter 1.
she's
Mr.
gonna make
Straka.
us
Not
work.
Not that I'm gonna be a pusher here, but
Nope.
but if you want the parents and legal guardians in education, and it's all statute. It's the Parents' Bill of Rights spelled out.
That's good.
All that.
Yeah.
And again, we have calendar days and reasonable method.
Okay, so I've made a note to go through and clarify if it says working, we're gonna sub in business, I'm gonna give you the definitions on calendars, so I'll try to make that more uniform and to not change the meanings of any state laws, but I'll make those changes globally in the policies before next time.
We got through all of chapter 1.
Good work, everyone.
Chapter 2 next week.
Aye.
They said 3. This one next week and then the one before the June board meeting.
A total of 360 pages to go through.
And we've gone through
We've gone through what?
50.
Yeah, 50. That's it.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody, we're gonna take a
Executive session.
So we'll convene, give everybody 5 minutes.
Very good to meet you.
All right, everybody.
On to the next thing.
All right. We will return to our regular meeting now. I will call that meeting to order at 4:38 for the record. Oh, wait, no.
Public hearing.
Public hearing is first. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna call us to the order for the public hearing of the budget. First item, do we have to put this, call this as the agenda item, or we can do it without?
The public hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah, the next item is to review the.
Okay. Let's roll.
Good evening, Chairman Shaka, members of the board. I am going to be presenting a revision to our 2023-24 budget. You've seen this budget now. This will be your fourth time. So what we do now at the end of the year is we finalize based on what the ADM has actually come out to be. So you all know we are on current year funding. So we project what we think our ADM will be for the year. We adopt that in July. And then we revised again in December. We revised down in December. And fortunately, the ADM has come back to where we really thought it would be. So that's what you're going to see this evening. So if we take a look at the budget limits, do I have the ability to advance here? This one. So if you look at what our budget limits are that we are revising to, you'll see our maintenance and operation went up to 70 million. Our capital stayed the same at 54 million. Classroom site fund, we are revising down to 4.6. And then our bond has stayed the same as well. So this kind of gives you the look at the history. Here's where we've been. So last year we ended up at 42.9 million. We proposed it at 54. We revised it down to 53 as we're required to do in December. And then we are revising it up. We've ended up with 8,500 ADM.
That's like a 34% increase.
That's huge.
Very nice.
So, and that is just all accredited to the work that our SIS team does. They work diligently to make sure that we get funded for every single student who participates in our programs. So that not only means when on our main campuses, our central campus, but also on their satellite campuses at the school districts. And that is quite a feat when you're working with 12 different districts and different student management systems. But I'm very proud of the work that the team has done to get us to this point. We have had conversations with the Department of Education about how our ADM looks. They are confident in this number as well. So we feel really good about presenting this to you this evening. There will be an action item later. This is the public hearing, but there will be an action item later asking you to approve the revision here. So classroom site fund, this kind of gives you a sense of what happened with that. When we revised last year, this is what it was at. We proposed it. Since then, Ken and Larry and I have come in and we've taken a look at where we are with this fund. And we are recommending that it be revised down based on the calculations that we've done. One of the things that we have found was that the ADM that we get classroom site fund on is not the ADM that we get M&O money on. Because our satellite schools are not included in that allocation. So when you look at the ADM or the classroom site fund report on the Department of Education and how we're funded, it is at this lower rate. Yes.
Question on that. So last year we had that $30 million. And we calculated, we did a $15,000 raise for all the staff based on that $30 million. And we put in for insurance for teachers and everything. Are you telling us that that $30 million doesn't exist?
Yes, Chairman Straka, I am telling you that that does not exist. We have looked at the commitments that we've made as a district. And we are able to sustain what you have authorized going into next year with the increased performance pay for our teachers and the salaries and the benefits. Now, that, although we have to revisit that every year, right? So coming the next year, we're okay for next year. The year after that, we'll have to see if that's still sustainable. If we keep growing at the rate we're growing at, and you see that additional $16 million on the budget, which we're expanding program, we are expanding campuses, we are going to be expanding our ADM. The hope is with that expansion, we will be able to sustain some of those things that we've put into place.
So, but we were gonna take some insurance. How much is gonna be left in that fund at the end of the year? Because I see 4 million, we were gonna draw it down to pay for things. What I'm not seeing, is that the balance at the end of the year, or is that the balance at the start of the year?
That's the budget. So the expenditure part of it is the second step, which we will come to you in October and we will show you how it's been spent. Am I looking at, can we sustain it to next year? Yes, the answer is yes, we can. Based on the calculation, the preliminary calculations that I've done. And the intent, I think, was to transfer some of the expenses out of M&O into classroom site fund. That's probably not something that we're gonna be able to do. So we're gonna have M&O sustain some of those expenses, which we can based on the numbers that I'm looking at right now. So then moving on to the next, I'm sorry, the capital stayed the same. So we still have quite a significant balance in our capital funds. So that will be good to sustain us through our projects that we have for next year. This time I would entertain any questions.
I have a question on the large increase in the M&O. It's about 17,000. 17 million.
Million.
Yes. Is that because we have implemented different methods in calculating ADM, or we have also had, or is it a combination of both things, that and a much larger increase in student enrollment?
Thank you, members of the board. That is both, right? So we are getting better, I think, at how we work with our member districts and making sure that they are reporting accurately with all of the students they're servicing. But it is also us expanding programs. Expanding programs, more students are enrolled in our programs than ever before. We have wait lists for some of our programs. I mean, I think it's just an testament to how this organization, how this district is serving the community and the community is responding. I can't go anywhere without somebody telling me a story about how West-MEC has impacted their students' lives. So I think it's a combination of both. I think it's only going to grow in the coming years as well.
So,
Can I tag on to that question?
yes,
So of the 16 million, I heard satellite and I heard central programs. How much of that is from satellites and what our member districts are doing? How much of it is our central programs? And then the second part is, how much of it is coming from, because we've grown to, I think, 18-19% of charter schools. Where does that money come from?
Thank you, Chairman Straka. That's a very good question. I don't have that percentage of growth and analysis, but I would definitely love to put that together and get that information to the board. So we can see where our programs are going.
Are our member districts contributing? Is it the central programs? Because where's the growth coming from? Because that's where we need to focus. I think we need to know that.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is,
Oh, sorry.
if you have a trend line showing those different sources of this growth, charter, off-campus, satellite, central.
Yeah, we can definitely put that information together for you. Question.
Other questions from the board? So can I go back to, if you can go back a couple of slides, the capital slide,
Sure.
54 million. And if you go back to one more, One more. We have $16 million more. There's no way we can spend that this year because there's a month and a half left. How much is gonna roll to capital do we project in of that 16 million?
Well, that'll be a decision that we make when I bring the proposed and the adopted budgets to you in June and July. My anticipation is once I look at, want to make sure that we have sufficient amount of M&O in the budget moving forward into next year to cover all of the expenses that we've identified for next year. So that's one of the things I'm working on right now with Larry and with Ken to make sure that we can cover all of our expenses in M&O. And then anything in excess of that, we I have a rule of, I want to make sure that we have enough reserve in our operating funds to be able to cover anything that might be an unforeseen or an emergency. You know, I like to carry about 8% in there, it's like 3 months worth of, you know, operating costs, right? And then anything in excess of that, we would transfer, or we could transfer over to capital. We also have a new school that's opening. I have the option of putting some of that money into a new school fund. And it sits there and then it helps us open up our new school if we need additional expenses for that, because we know there's operating startup costs that we'll have to incur for the Southeast campus. So there's a couple of different options, and I'll work with the leadership team and we'll make the decision and the recommendation as far as how we would like to kind of parse that additional carryover.
And then when we, my last question, also, we have some ESSER funds expiring, I think, September of this year.
Correct.
Do we know where is that all gonna get spent is really more my question. I don't want us to be like a district that I know of that forgot to spend their money last year. Ended up
Yes,
using it.
so Chairman Stuckett, and members of the board, that is a great question. And yes, we have spent every penny already. We've already filed our reports with the Department of Education and let them know that we've spent it. They have evaluated how we've spent and we got a clean bill of health. We're good to go with that. I've also, just if I may follow up with that as well, is I've looked at, did we commit any of that money into salaries that we now need to pick up an M&O? Because that's an additional expense and that is some, one of the places that some of our fellow districts have gotten into trouble where they've ran out of ESSER money and then they had to fund them out of M&O. So we've made sure we've accounted for that. There is nothing that we've put in there that's permanent for ESSER. Everything that you did was very well done, kind of as a one-time pay. So thank you for that. So we're good.
And then my last question is adult ed and the START Center. That's not in the K-12. Where do those numbers fit in there, or can we get that?
So they're self-funded. They pay for themselves, so adult ed cannot be funded out of M&O. So we make sure that whatever expenses we're incurring, that we have enough students participating in the program to cover the cost of those.
And so where would those adult ed numbers
They would
be?
come into a different, it's a different funding source. It's a 500 code fund.
So it's
So
not
you'll
gonna be
see,
these
it's not gonna
numbers.
be in this. This is just the budget controlled kind of funds that we have to make sure we are revising the budget to what our allocations should be from the state.
We don't have to report the adult ed to the state then?
We do. There's a line item on the budget for that. It's just not one of the ones that we have to increase the budget capacity for because it's a kind of a cash controlled account, if you will.
Okay.
Yep.
You?
Now we call for the question.
Oh. Okay. Call to the public? Questions, comments from the public? On the budget, Ms. Brown, do we have any cards? One more call to the public. Anybody wanting to talk about the budget? Numbers? Okay. Hearing no call to the public or call from the public. We will conclude the public hearing. Do we need a motion for that? All right. Then we will move on to our general meeting. for our monthly meeting. I will call that meeting to order now at 4:52. And I would like to invite Mr. Trevor Rice to come forward to lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance, to be immediately followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on. Item number 3, the motion to adopt the agenda as presented. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved by Mr. Miglerino, seconded by Mr. Garcia. Any discussion?
Oh, sorry.
Hearing none, we'll call for the question. Ms. Brown, whenever you're ready.
Barbara, did you get a pop-up?
I did, I voted.
No, Barbara, sorry.
No, but it says I should log back in, but it's all up here.
Yeah, you need to log back in. Just give me a yes or no.
Yes, I saw you gotta log back in.
Yeah, sorry.
It times you out. I log in like 10 times a meeting.
Motion carries.
Stay on.
I was gonna ask that question. Can we reset the timer so it doesn't lock you out after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, for like the entire meeting.
Oh,
So I gotta go out of it.
Could we get our laptops not to time out in 5 minutes where I have to log in? What?
Chromebooks.
That's a real thing.
I'm okay. I like carrying around an abacus. Not many people do that these days.
Hey, we have motion carried.
Fidget with the mouse and that keeps it going.
That's the only way you can. Just bring it and make it every couple of
I
minutes.
gotta reach down and pick it up.
All right, moving on to summary of current events. Dr. Spurgeon, we're starting with you.
Thank you, Chairman Straka. Very busy since the last time we met. We have completed some presentations. The first one was, we did one called the Hidden Gem in School Achievement for the CT program of the National School Board Association. We anticipated getting probably 10, 15, not sure who we were gonna get, but the room was almost completely full. Had a lot of positive comments afterwards that they've been waiting for something in CTE for the last 3 years. So they invited us to please reapply again next year to talk about the Career and Technical Education Center. So very excited about that. Second presentation was each year the Dysart Unified School District does a CTE community review. And so I was able to do a West-MEC update and an overview for each of those community members, students, teachers, and folks that were there. Business partners were also there. Third presentation was an update I did with third quarter performance results as the superintendent's institutional advisory council, and was able to share some great news with them. Very excited about the results coming out. I think you will be too as the year concludes. And then lastly, I was able to participate on a career pathways panel for about 130 leaders that came from Nashville to learn more about the career pathways that we work with here in Phoenix. So very exciting work that's being done in Nashville. Next, had an interview with the Phoenix Business Journal not too long ago about our role as West-MEC and CTE in the semiconductor space. And so they were very excited. So that should be coming out, if it's not out already, sometime around this time, maybe the next few days. I'm happy to say that I was participated in the Glendale Chamber Executive Director search, and that person has been named, so there's a new individual coming in to lead the Glendale Chamber of Commerce, so very excited about this individual. Also talk with Catherine Adams, who's with Pipeline AZ, and as you well know, Pipeline AZ is a part of the research engine for our career literacy space. And they were put on hold for a little bit, now they're back on track, so that work's gonna continue this summer. Remember, they're gonna be really our search engine for our students to complete those career pathway plans. And they're gonna have a jumping off space specifically for West-MEC, which is gonna be, we'll be the folks that will have that at the very beginning, so we're excited about that. Had a really good tour with United 88 Academy. It's the first time we've been there. And they're looking to potentially create a relationship or partnership for our students in the aviation maintenance program. And so we got a tour of their campus. They do a lot of training in flight school, but they also need mechanics as well. And so had a conversation. We're gonna start with that, looking for a way for us to partner with them, moving forward with our aviation maintenance students. Had a really great conversation with Sandra Day O'Connor High School. They're looking to work with the College Board and AP IT security to be able to utilize West-MEC's expertise in our programs along with the AP College Board side of IT security, which will be the first time we've had this kind of partnership around. And so we're expanding that conversation. We're hopefully going to be able to put something together where our students can access those AP courses and be able to take that test for that college credit. Next, we did our second meeting with the AEEC and the healthcare sub-team, which we identified the 5 most necessary or most in need professions in healthcare. We delivered that information at the regular AEEC meeting about a week or so ago. Mr. Williams and I visited the Arizona Charter Academy for the first time and visited with Melissa Holloway. And so we're working to establish a relationship with them and look to see how West-MEC resources may be utilized to do work in career literacy around with their students K through 8. We didn't realize this, but they have about 1,000 students in the academy there. So very excited about the work that's upcoming with them. And then Buckeye Elementary District had their community partners breakfast. We were able to be a part of that, have their community partners there. The last thing I'll mention tonight is this letter or this note comes from Amy Castleman. She is with the ASE Education Foundation. And she said, complete evaluation results of the automobile technician training program at Western Maricopa Education Center Southwest Campus has been received and reviewed. We are pleased to inform you that each of your programs met the strict industry standards required for ASE program accreditation. Both the educational and automotive community should be proud of your commitment to quality. So now at this point in time, all 3 of our automotive programs are ASE certified in the district. So that accreditation lasts until May 1st of 2029. So outstanding work by our automotive teachers and our staff and the standards that we build into our programs. It's really just second to none. So very, very excited about that ASE certification. That's all I have, sir.
All right, board members. Well, the SBA that we attended was really well received. I know that we hit it as a team, which was really good. We hit all the perspectives, lots of positive feedback walking out. They definitely want us back. They want to hear more. So did some presentations and then walked around and met some folks, met some people with great ideas. So it was really well worth it.
I went to the bowling tournament.
Fundraiser.
Too busy socializing. Very good. And then I went over to the Northeast campus the other day and they were having the first parents coming in for their medical students. So I get one of the students did my vitals and it was really fun.
Yeah.
It was great.
I went to the nursing, advisory committee, went to that and then watched some of the, mock interviews with our students and stuff, and they did really, really well. I was very impressed. Very good.
Sure. I think we were gonna say something. All right, moving on to call to the public. This is the time for the public to, I'm not gonna read the whole statement, Miss Brown, you're gonna yell at me, but if the public would like to address the board for anything outside of the budget, you're welcome to come at this time. Any cards, any takers? All right, All right, call to the public's going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going second time. All right, call to the public, going All right, moving on, we will move on to information discussion, item number 1. Saddle Mountain School District, come on out.
Okay, good evening. My name is Marcy Bencher and I am the CTA Director for Saddle Mountain. Thank you for having me tonight, Governing Board and Dr. Spurgeon. So we had to have like 5 slides here, so I'm going to make it quick. But first of all, it's the funding support that we receive. Being out in Tonopah, we are Title I school, very low income. So the funding that we do receive from West-MEC really helps with our CTSO support, allowing our students to go to fall leaderships, region, state, nationals, participate, show their skills. So that's super helpful. Industry equipment, we recently, just purchased a heat press for our graphics department because, and I will be talking about them a little bit later, but they're just doing phenomenal things. We have purchased 30 new HP laptops for our marketing, gaming computers for our robotics, and some welding equipment for our carpentry construction program. Some additional grants too. We did start a brand new law and public safety program this year, along with carpentry, and the money there helped to support supplies. We had really nothing for law and public safety. It really helped with bringing in supplies for our students to use. Certifications. I am actually doing the CCMA, so the Certified Medical Assisting next week. We have had OSHA 10, Parapro, Microsoft Office, Rise Up are some of the certifications that the funding has helped us to purchase for our students. And the West-MEC Premier Series, my teachers we have the membership. So we have sent a ton of teachers to the Premier Series here at West-MEC, and it's so incredibly helpful. They come back and they have learned just a ton because being a small district, we have a lot of brand new teachers, industry teachers, or from the industry, excuse me. So trying to teach them how to be a teacher is not always easy to do. So we really rely on West-MEC for all of that. So we're just very appreciative of all the funding that we receive. And being a brand new director, my 2nd year, I just also want to give a shout out to Dr. Spurgeon and Stephen and Jared and the whole gang. I've never worked with somebody or a group of people who have been supportive, patient, understanding, and I've been in education for 20 years. So it's been just made my life a lot easier. So they're just awesome to work with. Okay, so for the additional grant, we had law and public safety this year. We started with 42 students, and primarily most of them are seniors, so they're leading us. Our instructor is Chessa Emmons, and she is so incredibly good that the Goodyear Police Department hired her as a crime scene investigation specialist. So she's leaving us, but we brought in a 21-year Department of Public Safety teacher who is going to be replacing her. So they did phenomenal. And at Regions, actually this year, they took 1st place in crime scene investigations, and we celebrated because we beat West-MEC. With all due respect, but we were super excited that we're like, we beat West-MEC and took 1st place. It was fabulous. Our carpentry program is brand new this year. We are going to be eventually sunsetting and phasing out our construction. So current enrollment for this year was 44. A brand new teacher, Mike Welch, he is fabulous. Again, they're CTSO Skills USA. We don't have all of our numbers for next year, but right now I know for carpentry, we have more students who want to be in the class than we have room for. So we have to find other places for them. So very, very popular program. And the additional grant money really helped to get those started. My teachers could not come with me tonight. I had asked them, and it is the end of the school year, as y'all know. So there is so much going on that when I asked them a couple of weeks ago, hey, who's going to come with me? They gave me that look of, I just couldn't do that to them. So I am just focusing on 2 of our programs. Our graphic design, back in 21, 22, we did have a block schedule then. We had about 85 students. In 22, 23, we grew to 118. This year is, and that should say 23, 24, not 34. We're in a traditional schedule. We do have 99 kids in that class. Our teacher is very much the industry. So he's from industry. He was an art teacher. He was actually a kindergarten teacher for a while, and then he came up there, but he does graphic design on the side. This year, they worked with the Goodyear Art Department and the Surprise, actually art department, and him and one of our students were selected and received $1,000 each. They designed a traffic box. It's like a box at a traffic signal. And I know his will be on 303 and Bell. And I cannot remember where his students are gonna be, but it's gonna be out there in the public. Theirs was chosen, so it's super exciting. Our lab, our school-based enterprise, this year alone, they've screen printed over 1,000 pieces of merchandise, including sweatshirts, stickers. It's all been student created. Teachers or people will say, hey, this is what we want. The students create it. Then we kind of narrow it down, and then the students screen print it all or heat press it. This revenue actually was updated. They have brought in about 20,000. And from that, after their expensive, they netted about 12,000 just this year alone. So it's been super awesome for them. And they work with other departments. Our construction people, our construction kids are making cornhole boards. And then our graphics, they're designing the vinyl and putting it on there. People want it personalized. And then my law and public safety, because she's just absolutely fabulous and we're gonna miss her. But again, they placed first, so first time ever in Region 5 for the crime scene investigation. Within her classroom, she does a ton of CSI work, writing reports. They had liver out in the field and they looked at maggots to determine how long a person's been dead using liver. And it was really intriguing yet disgusting at the same time. But it was really just a neat way of seeing how long someone's been dead. Super involved in the community. They have helped out with the Buckeye Marathon, Buckeye Airfare. They did a presentation for our governing board. Just super involved. They've had guest speakers come in. They went to GCU Forensics Day. A lot of her seniors are actually going into the law and public safety field. So it's super awesome. The only downfall is we weren't able to give them a TSA test this year because it's loud. It's just the first year, so they were sad that they couldn't get cords. And thank you. So I told you I'd be quick, but we're really driven with the culture of working with West-MEC, and I can't even tell you how we probably would have what we had if it was not for the support of West-MEC. So thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, are there any other programs that the students would really like to have at the campus?
They would love to have automotive. So we send quite a few students to West-MEC because we do not have the room. So if you've ever been to Tonopah, it's growing. We are out of room. We are actually building another new building. Eventually we'll have a new high school. So we encourage our students to apply at West-MEC. I start talking to them in their freshman year because they all want to go, but they don't understand there's an application process. So get yourself together, make sure your grades are good. So automotive is a big one. And sports medicine is huge. Those are the two that the students talk most about. Eventually, we're talking when we build a new high school, taking our old bus barn, because we're going to move that and maybe turn that into an automotive shop. But right now we encourage any of the programs we do not have. We're like, here's West-MEC. And we have, I believe, there's 67 of our students going to West-MEC. We have 858 students in our school. 670 of them are involved in at least one CT program right now.
Mostly it's the Southwest campus.
Yes, most of them go to the Southwest campus. We have a few. We had one going to law public safety and then one going to Central campus for, gosh, what? Maybe, no, that's too far. Maybe it was coded. Yeah, I can't remember what it was, to be honest. I'm sorry. But I'd say 95% of our students go to the Southwest campus. Yes. Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
All right, moving right along. Mr. Clint Bashbaum from Wickenburg. Come on up.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Clint Bushbaum. I'm the CT director at Wickenburg Unified School District. I have Juan Jimenez, and Juan is a unicorn in that he teaches 3 different departments. So he's one of those rare ones that we will never let go. And we're gonna let him talk a little bit about the things that his students and him have done. I'm gonna give more of a higher version of what we've been doing as far as numbers go. So we have 7 programs and we're about to add our 8th. So we have business management, we have culinary arts, engineering, film and TV production, sports medicine, stage production, ag science, which is in year 2 this year, and then we'll be getting coding this next year. Now, we did sunset construction because we were rolling construction into our ag science program. The community wanted more workforce that could do welding and those things, so that's a big push that we're gonna be having moving forward with ag science. So we did obviously want to keep the construction component, but we wanted to fall under the ag science umbrella because that's gonna help our community a lot more. And then with coding, speaking of Juan, he will also pick up coding. So we're just gonna add one more thing to his plate just to keep him busy. He was too bored, so we thought we'd give him one more thing. Anything we asked Juan, he wants to do, and we always said we're gonna take less off of his plate or more off his plate, and he ends up taking up. So we love Juan, so he's a good one for us. So when you look at our numbers here, the last 3 years, here's where our numbers have gone. You'll see from the last 3 years, we've gone from 262 students taking CT courses. 2 years ago, last year was 303. This year we've jumped up to 404. So there's been a ton of growth for CT, which we're very proud of. With that said, a big reason for that is ag science. We started ag science last year with 1 section, and we could have had about 9 sections this year if we had the teachers to teach it. So it's grown faster than we were ready for. It's a good problem to have, but now we're trying to kind of catch up with that growth. The help we've got from West-MEC has been, so it's, you can't put a number on it. I want to give a big shout out to Joel. I feel like I asked Joel probably one dumb question every week or so. We're trying to hire new staff, but he's been so great with our staff, trying to get them certified and help them with professional development. So to everyone here, thank you so much. I'm in year 2 myself. So the first year was trying to learn acronyms of the CTE world, and I'm starting to get that figured out because everyone speaks in code in CTE, but we're getting there. So CTSO membership reimbursement, our regional, state, and actually went nationals last year too for ag science. We actually had a group in the first year make it to nationals. Industry alignment, equipment reimbursement, certifications, innovative grants. Professional development has been so important for us to help our new teachers. We, like Marcy, we've had a lot of turnover in CTE. As we continue to grow, we're having to pull a lot of teachers from industry that have no teaching backgrounds. So that's helped them so much to learn how to do management and how to set up lessons and those things. So it's been very, very helpful for our teachers. And then here's a look at the last, let's see, back to 2016, you'll see our total number of students that we've had, and then the percentage of those students that are actually in CTE courses. So we are a small district. We are the largest landmass in the state though. So we have to kind of lay the groundwork for when that growth continues to happen. We go all the way down the Festival Foothills. So there's a lot of open area that's starting to build out. So we are program heavy right now with having 8, but we're gonna need that because that growth is, we want to make sure that we have that foundation when we go. So if you look, we've gone from last year, actually 2 years ago, having 45% of our students in CT courses. Last year, we were 55.6. This year, we're 77.3. We anticipate close to 85% of our students will be in some CTE course. Again, a lot of that is because of the growth for ag science, but now that we've added coding as well, we expect that number to really shoot up as well. We're already going to have about 2 sections the first year of that. So exciting times, hard to find workforce. We're working hard at that, making sure we find our people, but you know, for the amount of students that we have and how many are in CT courses, it's very exciting. So what I want to do now is kick it over to Mr. Jimenez to talk a little bit about what his kids have done and what they're doing in the future.
Thank you for having us, members of the board. My name is, like he mentioned, Juan Jimenez. I am a 3-year instructor of Wickham High School. I have an opportunity to teach every day business management, film and TV production, engineering, and I do yearbook on the side. It has been quite a year, but I'd remiss if I didn't first thank you and all of West-MEC for your support, training, and resources. Just yesterday, we received new equipment that will help to better serve my film and TV production program. In addition, your program to help better transition industry members like myself into successfully being a CTE instructor has been invaluable to me, and it's honestly a godsend. Thank you very much, so much for that, being part of that. It's just, I don't know, I couldn't do it without it. As part of my duties, I run 2 CTSOs, which is the Skills USA and FBLA. which we aim to prepare members for future careers and have actually achieved some success in competitions and community engagement this year. We focused on networking, team building, community service, and exploring diverse career paths in the business, manufacturing, media, and entertainment industries. Their hard work paid off with 5 individual first place awards in different competitions. We earned the Chapter of Distinction in Skills USA and the prestigious FBLA Gold Chapter Award for the 2nd year in a row. My members and officers have committed themselves so that next year we go for platinum. So we'll cross our fingers and we'll work hard for that. My program offers the following certifications: Adobe Certified Professional in Adobe Premiere for film production, Rise Up Customer Service and Sales Specialist for business management students, and OSHA training for engineering students. Looking ahead, we're excited to partner with one of our nonprofits in town called Wickenburg Dark Skies to manage their online presence and establish community engagement and consciousness in their mission. We'll also be planning to launch a second and new community service project, which we're calling the color 4K color run or 5K color run. We're aiming to promote health and wellness while giving back to our community in a fun and positive way. Additionally, working with our admin, we will establish an in-house media company service where our students will handle advertising and online promotional campaigns for local businesses. This will provide an invaluable hands-on experience while focusing manually beneficial partnerships with our local businesses. And we remain committed to chapter growth, individual work based learning experiences, and community service, empowering our student members and aiming to impact positively our community and beyond. Thank you for having us. If you have any questions.
So following what my colleague brought up for the last one, what programs would you want if you can, make your programs better? What do you think would be something that you don't have now that we can add later?
Well, like Clint mentioned, we are probably program heavy right now, but if we needed to switch, in my personal opinion, maybe, graphic design or photography. Not that I'd like to teach it as well, but I do have background. I do have background in that, but it's something that we would have to look at and then maybe, reassess.
Coding is a big one, so I added coding as one of the students have asked for, so that's some of the reason why we're going to that this next year. And then welding, and that's why we did make the decision to move construction in, not that we had to, but it made it a lot easier for us, for our programs and for our teachers. So by adding welding this next year, hopefully we'll have one section that will incorporate it, and then it may even become its own section. That was a big one. There's a lot of a need for the community, and they're paying very, very well. It's just making sure our students are well trained and then they come out ready to work. And so by adding that to our district, we have great internship opportunities already for our kids. So that will allow kids to walk out making money that I could never have dreamed of as an 18-year-old kid. So yeah, those are the two big ones. Thank you.
You mentioned that you are working with a nonprofit and you're working with your community.
We're starting to do that to make sure that they have, a presence online. That usually especially this nonprofit, most of their members are older folks that don't necessarily have the time or not the time, but the knowledge to, take care of that. So it falls right on. And
What does the
my program,
nonprofit do?
it's Dark Skies Wickenburg. So
But what does it do?
it wants to keep dark skies in Wickenburg, so there's no pollution, everyone's light pollution.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to go to one of their meetings like 2-3 weeks ago, and they mentioned, eventually they want to get to where like Sedona is designated as a dark. So that would be the
keep it
goal.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be trying to help them.
These numbers are impressive, Obviously, CTE is alive and well in Wickenburg. My question is, when the seniors graduate, are they able to find work in the field that they were trained?
Yeah, in fact, they need more workers, to tell you the truth. A lot of our students, especially now that we have ag science, that's where that big growth has come from. Now, they're only in sophomore year right now. So what we anticipate, there's, because we're in year 2 for ag science, so the next year will be year 3. So, for those that choose to go into that field of construction and those things, absolutely. Now, when we get into our coding and our engineering, those students, locally, probably not as much. A lot of those, there's opportunities down in the valley, in different areas there. But we have students that have been culinary completers that now go work in different restaurants and those things. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It will remain to be seen as far as as we add our welding, if it grows, like we can assume it will, as of right now, there's not enough welders, but we'll see as things go, if they'll all be able to go into the workforce or how many of them will continue on as they get that. But that's a trade that you'll always need and you can always make money at. So we're excited with that.
Thank you.
I just think it's kind of exciting to see. We've never seen a school come or a district come and say, ag science is our big growing program. Mr. Kaltenbach would be thrilled, but it's kind of nice that depending on, it's the needs of the community. So that's kind of what's kind of exciting, because Glendale Union would never have ag science. And so that's kind of what's nice to see.
I was having, one of the people that owns one of the restaurants out there. And they would love to have a West-MEC campus out there.
Oh, yeah.
And as you said, and the thing is, I have people come in here and they talk about their childhood and how wonderful it was growing up in Wickenburg. And then she says to them, now where do you live now? And they go, Buckeye, Green Creek. Well, why don't you come back here? She wants them to come back to Wickenburg.
Well, the growth out there has been huge with Wickenburg Ranch, but those are more retired communities.
Yeah.
And that's why, when you look at the projected growth, we don't know how, obviously that's all dependent on market and whatnot, but we expect the district to go from a small district to a very large district over the next decade or so. So it'll be interesting to see how the change,
Yeah.
the growth.
Yeah. So it's great community. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on to item number 3, Mr. Welch, come on up.
Thank you, Chairman Straka, governing board members, Superintendent Spurgeon. I want to start this evening as we offer celebrations and join in celebrating our staff with each of you. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I think you've already heard this from our superintendent through written communication perhaps, but last week were ADE technical state assessments, and you heard some of our member districts talk about those. You'll know that, honest to goodness, like I was a little scared because last year we got 91% of our students passed. The average in the state is around 74%, so we were way above average. No one was even in the ballpark next to us. We set our goal at 90%, which I was, a little nervous under the collar. Can we do that again? This year, our teachers and our students achieved 93%. So 93% again, that has not happened anywhere in the state of Arizona. That is a real testament to our teachers. So during this week of teacher appreciation, absolutely celebrate all of our teachers, including the teacher of the month that we really want to recognize this evening with you in honor. So I'm going to ask Mr. Brian Morales, to join me up here. And as he joins me up here, Mr. Morales is our coding instructor at the Central Campus. He came to us from industry, really was a mastermind with casinos and gaming from both Vegas and here in Arizona doing some work, and like gave all that up to come and to teach and to give back to the community, and is just absolutely remarkable. He's taken on the CTSO chapter, really believing in leadership. One of the things I tell you about him too is it was my favorite camp experience last summer. So last summer, as we host all these camps, Ryan had don't know, you had like a lot of young kids in there that he was working with all and all sorts of manipulatives and stuff, and it was really dynamic to see. In addition, though, he's had incredible leadership with work-based learning. He really wanted all of his students, we know the power of, right? It's one thing for students to have hands-on learning in the environment, but to take that into an unpredictable setting of work-based learning outside of the classroom. Ryan really piloted with us the opportunity for students to either virtually or through brick and mortar, get a hands-on work-based learning experience for every one of his students, doing some new things with some virtual companies. That was a very successful pilot, something we will scale throughout the district next year, but that's 100% because of Ryan's leadership. So Ryan, we want to congratulate you for Teacher of the Month and ask you to take a picture with the board.
Mr. Welch, could we maybe do it under the sign here? It might be a little nicer.
We should get one.
Yeah.
I agree.
Sure. There was our chairman. Oh. Yeah, it's gonna get our new board member in here. I'll put it like a little. The chairman. Mr. Molina, why don't you, you join us? We just won't tell anybody.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations again. Good job.
And yesterday, we had the opportunity to congratulate him in front of his class. Thank you, Mr. Straka, Dr. Spurgeon, for that idea, but we had the ability to surprise him in front of his class. And Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. I did have a brief prepared remark here. Thank you, distinguished board members, Chairman Straka, Dr. Spurgeon, thank you so much. I'm both humbled and proud to receive this recognition. Over the course of the last 15 years, I have been able to teach in many schools, and this is the first time I've received Employee of the Month, so thank you so much. I consider myself very fortunate to have been accepted into this organization in a role that I'm passionate about, and I have been gifted a tremendous group of talented, knowledge-hungry students. And a great former mentor of mine told me we shouldn't seek to live a life that's easy. We should seek to live a life that's meaningful, and teaching by every account is not easy, but it is incredibly meaningful. And I have a group of students right now that makes one of the hardest jobs one of the most fun and rewarding experiences a person can have. And I'd like to use this opportunity to give some thanks where it's due. I have much to be thankful for. I want to thank my parents, Sal and Sherry, my grandmother Cleo, my Aunt Margie. They've always been guiding me toward a purposeful life. I want to thank the district administration for their vision, their commitment to excellence, my administration, Principal Goodbalden for his leadership, Mr. Tremaine Marshall for his patience and compassion towards teachers and students. I want to thank my friend and co-teacher, Ms. Carr, for taking me under her wing. I want to thank my good friend Jolie Sanders for always being there to listen in what's been a very difficult year for me and my family in many cases. Thanks to Ms. Espinosa for guiding the students towards rewarding careers, and all my good friends and colleagues at Central Campus for their support, kindness, and dedication going above and beyond for our students. All their names are on the bottom of this letter, but I won't read all of them because I'll forget somebody, I'm sure. And thanks to my instructional coach, Liza Molina, for her wonderful feedback and suggestions, and all the members of the CNI team for working hard to build up the best team of career and technical educators in the state of Arizona. It's a great honor and I'll cherish it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Morales talking about his students, because it really are our students that make West-MEC the very special place it is, and are the fuel behind that achievement that we talked about earlier. So this second award really goes to, so Ms. Wisdom, I want to make sure you're all ears, all right? Because this goes to a young person that you talked about recently at a board meeting. And I'd like to ask Wyatt to join me up here. So you remember Ms. Bussum last month or the month before was talking about one of our students who, in addition to incredible achievement, regularly goes down to work with the unhoused population and just do incredible community development down with lots and lots of folks. Recently, though, Wyatt here was recognized each year. The community colleges, so Gateway Community College has the opportunity to recommend to their chancellor a student of the year, one of their students on the campuses that has made just the most profound impact of the year. And for the first time ever in the history of Maricopa County Community College District, that award went to a high school student, which is this young man that you see right here in front of you. So tonight, we just want to applaud the work that he's done and the difference that he's making and celebrate the award that he was recently given. So with that, Wyatt, wow, what a pleasure.
I didn't have anything written out or prepared whatsoever, but I've definitely been very happy to be sitting here and listen to everyone. I'm just crazy enthralled with West-MEC and to be a part of this organization. Oh, to be a participant, I don't know exactly what my role will be, a student in this organization. I have had a drive for years to pour into medical, to pour into people around me, and West-MEC has given me every opportunity to just utilize every skill and passion that I have. And been able to continue more. It's something I'm not gonna forget it. You know, something that I'm gonna have for, like, everyone probably knows when their high school year is 18. A lot of people like, oh, I went to parties or whatever. I did not. I went to West-MEC and I worked on homeless people, and I loved it, and I'm just super grateful for the opportunity to have the skills to do that. I mean, and that's yeah, I'm just very, 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 very happy. So thank you all. Thank you, Chairman Straka and Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon. And thank you, Ms. Bussum. Thank you. Thank you all.
So what do you do?
My dream, and I'm kind of debating this right now, because after a series of events, is I really like medical very much. I'm good at it, and I don't even know anything about going to college, like as far as but I want to be a doctor in my head. Like I want to be a doctor and I want to be a physician. I don't even know those things, but what I have known, what I have practiced for the last few years is the fire department. And I've already been through the final testing process for Glendale. They did turn me down recently. But I have had a lot of really good rapport with the Glendale Fire Department, and I'm going to continue working towards that. Maybe do a few research into what it takes to be a doctor. I don't even know what that would entail, but I think I might try to explore my options right now before I, dedicate my life to something. So just gonna utilize what I have.
I'm sure West-MEC will help out. We know a lot of people.
Yeah, anyone that I could have to kind of point me in a direction, educate me a little bit would be amazing. So cool. Awesome.
Thank you. Congratulations.
It's exciting for you to get to meet. Why, we don't, you have the opportunity to hear from our member districts quite often. And so you got to see those things that are happening, but in our concurrent and our college programs that Ms. Please really helps us oversees, that we're looking to grow those opportunities. You can see those are just as impactful as our programs with the member districts. And it's exciting, right? We know the American dream begins with a dream. And so West-MEC, a big part of what West-MEC does is inspires dreams in young people, just as you heard him talk about. I also get tonight to celebrate just a couple district accomplishments. So we just finished the ACT Region 5 conference, and at that conference, right, so in the state, there are state awards. Those state awards go to region awards, and then region awards go to national awards. So right now, we're at the place of regional awards. So these regional awards, every single Arizona award had a West-MEC connection. So there weren't, Our friends in EVIT, they didn't get any awards. Every single award started and began with West-MEC. The award winners are provided for you there, but Jennifer Klein, Post-Secondary Educator of the Year. She really is the one that works with Esperanza at managing our EMT program. She was instrumental in moving us from a clock hour program to a credit bearing program so that students really have that college experience and that transcript that carries with them. Our Dysart Automotive program for the work that they're doing with solar cars won an innovation award. Deb Moore, who's been before this board several times, she's just a unbelievable satellite teacher for many years in the Peoria district and later the Deer Valley district. She won a Lifetime Achievement Award. And then the standing room only sessions, as a matter of fact, in the afternoon, they had to close down 2 of the sessions that no one attended because everyone was standing room only at West-MEC sessions, which included both Shelley Tom and Dr. Aaron Parsons, who is in the room. So just want to congratulate them on those successes and those award winners. Just like our teachers and professionals here at West-MEC, our students continue to do very, very well. Recently, Skills USA had their state championship. The transportation, so the automotive contest for Skills USA, the state conference was held at UTI, one of our strategic partners. 14 of the 16 awards all went to West-MEC students, right? Again, phenomenal, very, very exciting for them. That partnership that we have continues to strengthen, and our students continue to be able to test out, do challenges that test out that really allow them to advance 6 to 18 weeks ahead of others, so they're not having to pay tuition. That continues to be just a phenomenal partnership that really is accelerating student success in that career area. Just last week was a work-based learning conference. You know, the whole nation is really trying to better understand, you know, apprenticeships. We've talked about those, but how do we grow work-based learning in meaningful ways? And they had a conference of the best thinkers in the nation about this, and they wanted to celebrate their own and really gave an award of who is leading work-based learning in the nation right now. That award went to Susan Leon. Susan Leon, our work-based learning coordinator here with the district, earned that highest award of that echelon of folks. So very, very proud of that. And finally, for the good work that you guys have celebrated a couple of times, but the Arizona Association of School Business Officials, ASBO, awarded us with the Best Practices Award for the transportation work, the transportation grant. Thank you very much, Mr. CJ Williams, for leading that effort. But we know what started out as a pilot has been very successful. Our retention is better because of this grant, and more students have the opportunity to achieve because of that grant. So we're very proud of that award. Boy, with that, thank you very much. It's been an awesome month.
The scholarships that our kids earn at UTI, you forgot to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. So $250,000 of scholarships went to West-MEC students for UTI. So as Dr. Spurgeon said, right, in addition to they can challenge out of classes, so they don't have to pay for those classes, they also got that $250,000 in scholarships. And just absolutely incredible. And of course, Holly can tell you the power of that. Her son went through that program and now is doing very, very well working with Porsche. So these students will have that same American dream in front of them. So exciting.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, legislative updates and partnership updates. Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon. We're approaching evening. I guess it depends on how you keep your day, but good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the board, Superintendent Spurgeon. As always, thank you for the opportunity to provide some updates on our strategic efforts with business development and the few updates that we have out of the Capitol downtown. So Happy Youth Apprenticeship Week. That is, this week is National Youth Apprenticeship Week. And in honor of that, I had the chance to sit on a education panel this morning as part of the Youth Apprenticeship Accelerator put on by Arizona at Work and the Center for the Future of Arizona. I was joined by Grand Canyon University and Central Arizona College to really talk about how education plays a role in connecting students to those apprenticeship pathways. West-MEC specifically, we've talked about this before, but we're doing some strategic work with the city of Phoenix and TSMC to articulate pathways into their the nation's first semiconductor apprenticeship opportunity. We also have good articulation agreements with some of our trades partners for electrical and other trades related programs. And then we really invited the statewide CTE curriculum consortium into this conversation to help us develop really a statewide approach to apprenticeships. So we're looking forward to that. And I just share that in honor of Youth Apprenticeship Week. I will piggyback on a couple things. I was able to attend the Leadership West Job Creation Day, and this happened last week. I was able to sit on again, an education panel at that event in partnership with Agua Fria and the city of Avondale. What was nice about that panel is it really allowed us to illustrate the ecosystem of education, working with our member districts in Agua Fria and the academies model that they're bringing on board, and then our partnership with city of Avondale and their economic development, workforce development efforts. Dr. Spurgeon shared our last Superintendent Institutional Advisory Commission that was held, and he was able to share the updated success metrics with those attendees. I would add that we held that at Barry Goldwater's Avenue 27, which is a student-run restaurant on Barry Goldwater High School's campus in Deer Valley, which was intentional to really expose those members to the fact that West-MEC's not just our 4 central campuses, but we really extend into our partner districts and all of our satellite programs. And it was eye-opening for them. They were very appreciative of the opportunity to go out and see that firsthand. And we had lunch prepared and served by the students in their culinary arts program. Some of our West-MEC staff had, and this will kind of illustrate how far we've come with TSMC over the last couple of years. Originally, our conversations were, you'll never step foot in the fab. You'll never see the inside of the fab. And a couple of weeks ago, a group of West-MEC employees had the opportunity to tour the fab out at TSMC and don the full gear. And it's really valuable to be able to bring that information back and insight back to our students that might consider a career at TSMC, because they need to know what that environment looks like.
What's about wearing gear?
Well, I was not one of the ones that attended. I don't know if we have any with Laura. Were you there, Jared? You were there. Tell us about the wearing the gear and going into the fab. Yes.
Yeah, it's quite the experience. It was pretty amazing to see inside the fab, and really what's operating right now is like 1/2 of one fab. So and the scale of that was phenomenal. So to imagine what it's going to be when all those fabs are operational is mind blowing. But yeah, you don a full suit, so it's the bunny suit, but from head to toe, you've got the booties on, the full suit, head, like it goes over your head, and then a mask that you have to wear, all of that. So you go into a separate room, into like their clean room, and it's kind of just all these white walls that you walk through, kind of like it's like you're ready to go walk into like a spaceship or something. It's like the tunnel that you walk through, and then you wash your hands, you don up, and then they take you in. So, but then once you're in, it's, there's like technicians doing, maintaining all the equipment and all those things, all this, the job we'll prepare our students for. They're doing the same types of jobs, but on just this.
They wear gloves, and what are they physically doing?
They're physically working on, they're maintaining the equipment and what they call the tools in the fab, but the tools, like, it's hard to even describe because they're customized, because they're manufacturing these chips, computer chips, right? So these wafers, they call it. So they're manufacturing the wafers. So it's a very advanced manufacturing process. So there's like these tools, they call them, that are these huge pieces of equipment that go, you see the surface level, and they go all the way down into the ground. but there's pipes and wires and mechanisms, robots running across the ceiling that are taking it from one place to the other. And so they're maintaining and operating all of that equipment. So we got to tour, so there's people outside of the fab, a lot of the jobs outside of the fab that they're in a computer lab essentially, and they're operating what's happening inside that fab from a computer screen. And then inside the fab, they're doing the hands-on maintenance of the equipment. When something breaks down, they're saying, hey, we've got an issue on whatever, number 5, it's way more complicated than that. Number 5, the process, we've got an issue, and then they go in and the technician goes in and identifies what the issue is and fixes it.
So for 8 hours, you got this thing on and you're working there.
Yeah,
Is it something that you would want to do 5 days a week, 365? I mean, I don't know. It kind of sounds.
It definitely is something it's important for us to, those positions where you'd be inside the fab, I think that'd be something you'd have to get used to. We got to talk to a lot of technicians and a lot of them are like, you just get used to it. Like any other job, to them, it's like, it's routine. So it's just what they do, like any other kind of uniform. But for some people, that might be a deal breaker for them. But there's a lot of the jobs they're hiring for right now are not even inside the fab. So there's a lot of positions for our students. We have current students working there that were actually there when we were visiting, and they were working as manufacturing technicians who work operating the system outside of the fab.
Do they have salary wise? Do they?
I don't know exactly what they're making salary wise. Yeah, but I'm sure the ones inside the fab are doing very well.
So Jared signed a non-disclosure that he wouldn't share any of that information, so good luck with that. I'm kidding. I'll close with, tomorrow, we have the opportunity to host some guests from the Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute out of New Mexico. Their Board of Regents will be at West-MEC Southwest Campus. Dr. Spurgeon will lead an overview of West-MEC, and they'll have a tour of the campus as they look to really kind of make those connections with their system to serve their community in New Mexico. So we continue to have reach well beyond our footprint and outside the state. And we look forward to meeting with them tomorrow. A couple of legislative updates. It's been quiet, but not so quiet, depending on which issues you're following. Much of the air has been consumed by the abortion ban and the House Bill 2677 repeal that followed. And this week, there's a lot of attention on the House concurrent resolution focused on immigration and border policy and giving local law enforcement authority to address some of those issues at the border, which generated a response from the governor today. So those issues, which are not directly tied to education or career and technical education, have been dominating some of the public space. We are told to be confident that the budget negotiations are ongoing and they're getting closer and closer. Memorial Day is always this artificial benchmark, but we could easily go well past that. The month of May saw the legislature convening once on Wednesdays. The House then went into recess. They've extended that through May 15th. The Senate has met today and tomorrow to address some bills that were remaining on the floor. Specific to CTEDs, you'll remember that we had our 4th year funding cleanup language that we ran a bill through Senator out of Prescott, Senator Bennett, and it got stalled out in some of the back and forth between the chambers and the committees. So we have revised that strategy to get that language as part of the budget conversations. They're really, because of the budget landscape, are sensitive to anything that's got dollars attached to it, no matter how little. So we're trying to put any fiscal impact out 3 years outside of that 3-year budget window that they often look closely at for budget negotiations. And currently, funding would get triggered on 9th grade students beginning next year, but wouldn't be committed or funded until FY27. So we're trying that angle. We'll see. Again, it's a lot of work to try and get something through the budget negotiation process, but we'll keep you posted as that evolves. I think that's all I have for the legislative update. We'll see. Hopefully by the next time we meet, we'll have some updates on a budget. I stand for any questions.
Questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I got lost or I got locked out.
You just need to say we did it.
So Mr. McLarino would like to read all 350 pages of the policy.
60.
360, I'm sorry.
4 and years ago.
All right, let's see, I don't see. Oh, Ms. Mays, are you coming up or we're just looking for the first read, we've talked through it. And that's all we have to do.
Just recognize that we.
And we'll be convening at 4 o'clock next Wednesday to continue on this journey. All right, no action is required. Consent agenda.
So
I would like to pull I2.
No action. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus number 2. Second? Second, all right. Ms. Louisa, are you ready? Am I gonna have to log back in?
I hope so. I did.
Hi, she's.
Yes.
It passes, so we can move on. Can we do? Consent item number 2. Can we do that next? Ms. Bosom, your questions, comments?
I2, yeah, I wanted to go over what West-MEC employees applied for the learning systems and the central program counselor. Were there any West-MEC?
Yes.
And who were they?
Good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the governing board. There were was your question, were there any internal candidates, Ms. Bosom, that applied for both positions? The answer to that question is yes. For the administrator for learning systems, we did have Dr. Erin Parsons, who is our current principal, applied for that position. We also had or Dr. Parsons was also part of the other committee for the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning.
And for the counselor?
I did not sit on that search committee, so there is any.
The counselor at the Northeast campus, is that what we're speaking of? We don't believe that there were any internal because there's not a lot of other counselors other than the counselors that are already employed with us. So.
Yeah, I just want to kind of get a picture of who is applying for these jobs that were
Yeah, I will tell you the really good news is the counselors that apply always come out of our member districts that have been West-MEC reps. So almost 100% of them that are now our counselors got there because of the good work that they've been doing to take that leadership role for West-MEC on their member district campus. So Alicia Pataco is that person from Willow Canyon and Dysart district this year. So very exciting.
And how long has Erin been with us?
7 years. And actually, an internal candidate obviously did get the position for the assistant superintendent for teaching. And that would be Jerry.
Yeah.
Before we do the reorg. Let's before we discuss. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion then to approve item number 2.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Garcia.
I would like to address some things, when we have an internal employees, I think that, we do a really great job with our students, with their career trees, getting a plan and stuff like that for them to, move on with their life and, achieve their goals and their dreams. And I think that's one thing that we fall short at West-MEC with our employees. And I would like to see us grow our employees when we have somebody like Erin Parsons, who is a stellar employee. And what was he? Being passed over for somebody from the outside. Yeah, it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I want to see growth. It's, when you hire from, move people forward, it creates like a family, a loyalty. That's how you keep people. Sometimes throwing money at them isn't all that. It's the growth and, enjoying what you're doing. And this is what I'd like to see a lot more of. So I would like to entertain a motion as far as,
We have to stick to the
Okay.
motion of the HR report. We don't have anything else on the agenda, so if you'd like to bring a future agenda item, we can do that. But
well,
right now, the motion is item number 2 from the consent agenda.
And I'd like to call for the question.
and this is to approve the hiring of these new employees.
Yes.
Correct.
Sure. Can I also? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And also as a point of order, we really shouldn't be discussing any employees in an open meeting without notifying them that they're gonna be discussed.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Equal that to.
So, but we're hiring these employees. The rest of the discussion is separate.
Okay, so if we can say yes to only a couple of them and separate them out, can we do that?
If you would like to make a amendment to the motion, and if it gets seconded, we could address that first.
Okay, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, that the positions for the central program counselor.
It's an amendment.
So it'll be made by the person who made the motion.
Anybody can make an amendment, but it has to get a second.
And then the hairstyling instructor, separate that out from the administrator of learning systems so that we vote on them separately. So we have the first two.
You'd like to amend the motion to what?
Okay, so that we vote on the central program director, counselor, the hairstyling instructor. And vote on those, and then the administrator for learning systems separately.
Is there a second? The second to Ms. Bosom's amendment.
For the amendment.
I'm gonna call it second time. Is there a second for her amendment? Otherwise, the amendment will die.
Can you repeat the amendment, please?
So in other words, okay, so the first one, so nobody from West-MEC applied for the central program counselor. They're hiring a hairstyling instructor that we need. And then they want to hire an outside person for the administrator of learning systems when we have somebody.
Sorry, when can you repeat the amendment? So that we can know what the amendment is, whether it's gonna get a second or
To
not.
separate, okay, at the central program counselor and hairstyling instructor voted, we can vote for those together. And then separate the administrator for learning systems separately. So that we can either vote yes or no on one of them. Like I said, I think it's really important that we hire within West-MEC. And to know that our employees are being passed up.
Is
Just
there,
it's,
is there a second for the amendment?
Do we have discussions?
I'm waiting for a second for the amendment. If not, we're gonna go back to the original amendment. Or the original motion. Okay, I am not hearing a second for the amendment, so the amendment will die. That brings us back to the original motion to approve item 2. You called for the question?
I did.
So we are up to the vote. Ms. Brown, could you provide the vote then?
For CA2 for personnel action items for April 4th through May 8th as presented. It should be. There you go.
So we were voting on just item 2 as presented after our discussion. I didn't mean to be bossy, but I needed to get the amount, if the amendment was gonna go, and if not, then we just go back to the original motion.
Ms. Bosom, I'm still waiting for your vote.
I don't have anything up.
Are you clicked on agenda item I2?
Oh.
Okay, so that item passes. All right, that takes us out of the consent agenda and on to additional action and discussion items.
Chairman Straka, I just have a question, procedural question. On that last vote, Mr. Garcia asked about discussion. Would that have followed after someone seconding the amendment? Is that when the
Yes,
discussion
But
follows?
we didn't have any, so we
Okay.
didn't have an amendment on the floor. We only had the main motion,
Mid-motion.
which we had already discussed, and then Jim had called for the question, so.
You need a
that's-
second to then open it.
Right,
Up to the
because-
floor for discussion.
Because otherwise we can't have discussion without an amendment. An amendment only happens if I have a
Yeah.
motion and a second.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so for the action and discussions, for recruitment of positions. Is it the board's, one of our duties to do the hiring for these folks? They went through a panel interview, background and everything else, is it?
Our job is to set policy for the district. So we would set policy on the process of hiring, which there's committees. But the board ultimately makes the decision to hire. That's statutory.
So I understand we hire the superintendent. And the superintendent hires staff.
But we must approve everybody hired. That's why it's on the personnel action.
Okay.
Otherwise, we wouldn't go through this exercise.
Well, I wasn't aware, cause again, reading our policy bylaws. Administration duties are all funneled through the superintendent. So I'm kind of. Not clear.
Because you have to hire the person because they have a salary. That is an expenditure that we must approve.
All the teachers, we get them too, all the instructors.
Everybody.
Okay.
And some districts will actually put on the salary they're being hired at. Because it's an expenditure.
So going back to my colleague's discussion about West-MEC employees applying for positions. It's
So we're getting dangerously off the agenda topic, but.
not naming names, but in policy, is there a point system we can add as a benefit for people that are in West-MEC right now, trying to prove themselves and grow in their careers, that we can add to that process?
So we're getting very dangerous off the agenda topic, but I would say, I hear your question. It's not something we can discuss because it's not posted for 24 hours. But I would think that it could, I would direct staff to respond to that hypothetical question
At a later time.
at a later time.
It can be a future agenda.
We can discuss it at future agenda items. Yes, ma'am. Anything else? Okay. The expenditure budget that we heard in the public hearing. We are now back for approval.
I move approval of the 23-24 expenditure revised budget as presented. And I want to thank Ms. Rodriguez for a great job. You're up to a tremendous start. Appreciate it.
Waiting for a second.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Wiley beat you to it, Mr. Ramirez. Any other discussion, questions?
Yeah, I actually have a question. Question. Basically, I just wanted to know online. The special education 1,000 instruction line item. What is that paying for? What is that line item? Can you give me a breakdown or?
Yes, thank you, Member Ramirez, members of the board. The way that our budget is put in, it's a little misleading, if you will. That's that second section where you see it says special education, it says 200 and 300.
Correct.
So West-MEC falls all under 300. We're a special program. So that is why all of our expenses fall under there. So that's all of our teachers, that's all of our staffs on that line 1,000. So it doesn't mean we have special education programs per se, it's our programs that are in that category.
And that amount is it goes to pay for salaries and.
Yeah, so there's several different columns, if you will. So you can see under that 1,000, you have salaries and benefits, but you also have purchase services, supplies, and then other, which under other falls our memberships and the work that we do to get our kids certified.
Don't we have anything in 540?
That's an old accounting code. We don't use 540 anymore. All of our codes are now the 300 categories. It's just the way that our accounting by the Auditor General is given to us. So we code things the way they tell us.
You'd think they'd update their forms.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a motion by Mr. Migliorino, second by Barbara Briley.
Ready to vote? All right, moving on. You may as well just stay up there, Ms. Rodriguez. Financial and compliance.
So thank you, Chairman Straka, members of the board, Dr. Spurgeon. So this evening, there are 3 items that we're going to discuss. The first one is our annual financial report and our audit. So just want to give you a little bit of background and why this is really important for the district. This report informs not only you as a board of how well we're doing financially, but also our taxpayers. The Auditor General gets these reports, so does the Department of Education, and also our bondholders. So they look at this report to see how financially sound we are. Are we a good risk to invest in? So this report comes out every year. It has just been in recent years that this report now needs to be accepted by you as a board. Before it was just always an information item that we brought to our boards, but now you need to accept it and accept it as a roll call. So that's part of the process. So I just want to share what you're approving, what you're actually accepting this evening. So we have 3 different reports that I'm going to share with you. The first one is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. We call it the ACFR. That comes in 3 different sessions. So this is a very thick book. There's a lot of information. Here's a lot of numbers. So just to break it down simply, there's an introductory section, and that tells you about the organization as a whole. We kind of get to do some bragging in that. Administration kind of says, here's how we're expanding, here's our programs, here's the value that we add to the community. The financial section, all numbers, just telling you how we're spending our money, how the revenue comes in. And then the third one is statistical. So that talks about the community that we serve. It gives you some population information. It gives you like who our large employers are in the area. And it talks about, you know, how our ADM and our trends have been for the organization. So that's one section. So does anybody have any questions about the ACFR before I move on to the next reports? So the next report is our single audit. This is the smaller one, okay? This focuses on federal programs. So what they do is they pick a federal program, you know, and they picked ESSER. This year, they looked at how we spent our ESSER money. That was a big amount of money that we received, and that was great. They said, yep, we spent it correctly, no problems. The other thing that it looks at is internal controls. So you can see internal controls, how we are complying with internal controls. And if there was any findings in there, we have an opportunity to say, yes, we acknowledge that we have an area to improve upon. I always look at these audits as they come in, especially as the new CFO. I'm going to look at these audits and I'm going to say, where are some of our areas we have some opportunities to improve? And I'm going to target those areas when I come in. So one of what you'll see in that single audit is we have some internal controls that we need to work on. I've already started addressing some of these things with our staff. I've been fortunate enough, my other employers allowed me to come here 1 day a week so that I can kind of get to know the staff and what are some of our areas that we can work on. And we've already put plans in place. I'm very pleased. We have an amazing staff in the finance department, and I'm excited to be starting to work with them and putting these practices into place. So that's what you'll see with the single audit. Then the last part of what we're looking at is, oops, that went the wrong way, is the USFR compliance questionnaire. Well, that's the big old packet A. Not sure if you got it printed off, but it's got all of these like 160 some questions. Our goal is to answer all of them yes. Okay, and that is always my goal as the CFO. And every place I always go, I'm like, okay, our job is yes on every, right, all of the questions. Now, I will have to confess, I have not had 100% yeses yet, but I've come really close. But there's always something, right? Because we're human beings. And we've got humans doing these jobs. But all we can do is learn from them. So that's the approach I take with the staff and anybody who's interacting to answer these questions is What can we do to support you? What kind of training can we provide you? What kind of processes can we put in place so that we can answer yes? So again, those are the conversations that I'm having with staff. We're gonna go through this compliance questionnaire. We're gonna answer yes to all of them. If we happen to have a no, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. But what do we need to put in place to get a yes next year? So that will be the approach that I'm gonna take with our team. So you can see all the different areas. There's lots of things that they ask us that we have to be in compliance with. It is quite a lot. You'll see a lot of this stuff in your policy too. A lot of the policy and chapter 3 that you'll be reviewing is gonna be all of the requirements that we have for the financial obligations, and we want to be good stewards of the public money. So we are very conscious of. And then as a board, I know that your directive will also be, Marcy, let's make sure we have all yeses next time. So here's the next step. Since developing and implementing internal controls, reviewing what our current practices and procedures are to see if there's some modification that maybe need to be done. What I see in my just initial is West-MEC has grown very quickly. And I often see that in times when I've gone to districts that have grown very quickly. We're just running to keep up with what's going on. Let's step back a minute and let's put some practices in place that will get us ready for that next level. Because I'm feeling like we're ready for the next level here. I can see it happening already. And you'll see some of the findings were general ledger related and train, and provide support. So that will be our goals for next year. Are there any questions?
So I have a question. Are the questionnaire questions typically the same every year or do they change?
Well, sometimes they change them up on us,
Okay.
and that's one of the things I often talk to the Auditor General about. I just want to thank Mr. Weeks. He's been instrumental in this audit. And Mr. Weeks and Mr. Hicks and we all work with the Auditor General's office to say, if you're gonna put a new question on here, can we have the question before the year we're getting audited?
Yeah.
So we know the rules to play by, so there are a couple of new questions on here this year. I've talked to them about those questions, and I also will work with our auditors. A lot of times if a question is on there the first year and we didn't know it was gonna be on there or it was something new, there's a couple of questions on here that really aren't even required by law to be on here. And those kind of questions, they catch us off guard, right? So I'll work with the auditors and say, hey, you know what, that's the first year that question's on there. Could you just give us like an advice on that and not give us a no? So those are conversations I always have.
I think as an aside, I don't want to take up time now, but I'd love to discuss internal controls and compliance, having come from that background. I've often thought that school districts just don't have that, so.
I think you'll find out if you get in there. There are internal controls, and it's thanks to Mr. Weeks and Mr. Hicks and Ms. Rodriguez that we get this. Thousands of transactions go through that business office every day. It's almost next to impossible to get a clean audit where you have the auditor comes in to find fault. That's what their job is. But I really think you will be surprised at how many internal controls, how many people check and double check. And I'm amazed at what we've gone through here for the last couple of years. And my hat's off to all three of you for a job well done. I know Kathy Mays has had something to do with it too. Good job, all of you.
No, I appreciate it, and I know it's hard work. I'm surprised to see like 5 out of 25 having the right controls, and that's kind of a on
Go look.
So let's go look, but no, that's it. But thank you for presenting it.
Thank you for liking numbers.
Yeah, we all like numbers, some more than others.
Thank you.
All right, so we now need to
Except.
accept the report. It just means that we acknowledge we're accepting the report. Doesn't mean there's any action. Is that correct?
Yes, and to accept the financial audit compliance questionnaire from Highfield Meach and Company PC Certified Public Accounts for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023.
Motion for Mr. Miglerino, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bosom. I'll call for the question.
Should I vote yes?
Oh, because your daughter works in that department. No. All right, it passes. We can move on to number 3, Dr. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was gonna be Dr. Spurgeon. Ms. Mays.
Good evening, Chairman Straka, Dr. Spurgeon, members of the governing board. The administration is recommending that the governing board approve an additional 20% in compensation for instructors that are teaching an additional section. One of the things that came out of the utilization study was, we have these open spaces in our work days for some of our teachers or for some of our campuses. And this would be an opportunity to grow programs and allow our teachers to kind of think out of the box. Are there some new innovative programs that you'd like to try or new skills that you want to teach our students? And this would allow us to do that and to provide them with that compensation. So by increasing the enrollment, by fostering these new programs, we do anticipate that if there's about 24 to 25 students in the classroom or in the section, that'll bring in approximately $175,000 to the district and increase our ADM. So that 20% really does pay for itself. The other thing is that we monitor the signups for those kids before we allow the teacher to do the additional section. So if there's not a lot of interest for the program, even if the teacher wants to teach it, then we have to make sure that it is sustainable. Yeah. So we are asking the governing board to approve the additional 20% compensation.
And I think Dr. Spurgeon, what you told me right now, there's only one instructor
Correct.
targeted. And there's, like you said, specific controls in place. Before we add it, you have to have a certain number of kids. And there's a trigger, make sure they all show up. Otherwise, we have to drop it.
Correct.
So,
It pays for itself.
and it pays for itself. And that's why if too many drop in the summer.
Those kids.
And because of the teacher shortage, if we have a teacher on campus that's willing to do that, we don't have to go out and hire a teacher. So
20% is better than 100%. And it's also a family commitment because now they're working essentially they're working a 10.5-hour day.
It also allows us to target specific student populations because K-12 comprehensive system students have to be back in their home building 4 hours a day, either in the morning or the afternoon. This allows us to also target our charter, homeschool, online and private school students that actually have more flexibility in their day. And again, when we did the capacity study, as you remember, what we're going to do about those times where the building was open, where those classrooms were available. And this is our first step in that process to see how we might be able to, because we turn so many kids away every single year, we're trying to continue to add programs. So this would be a good step in the right direction.
maybe some of those waitlisted kids could go into a different program that they didn't even think about. So
Is there a motion? Motion to approve as presented? Yes. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Ramirez. Any other discussion? Ms. Brown, can we get the question? Right. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. Reorganization plan, Dr. Spurgeon, I'm gonna leave this to you.
Thank you, Chairman Straka. I'm not gonna go through the entire plan, but I do want to talk about some specifics. The first thing I want to do is give a little background and history on kind of why we became, we developed this new plan. As you all know, Mr. Welch is leaving us and his department has had a number of departments reporting directly to him for the 10 years plus that he's been here for our school district. And so we felt it was the appropriate time with Mr. Guy coming in to replace Mr. Welch. Then we have Marcy Rodriguez coming in to replace our CFO. It's a good time for us to be able to do some dividing of roles and responsibilities for our departments. And so everybody's had a chance. We visited, leadership's visited with everyone, so I'm not going to belabor the things we've already talked about, but I do want to talk about specifically, just to go on record about the 3 positions that we're proposing to add. Underneath the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, we're proposing adding 2 program managers. We're going to be adding 7 brand new concurrent enrollment partnership programs. And what that means is dual credit is taught on West-MEC campuses. Concurrent enrollment programs are taught actually on the campus, the community college campus itself. And to manage those programs, it takes individual folks to be able to, it's almost like a campus administrator, because when you're on the college campus, they have no responsibility for all the other things that have to occur, be able to keep the students in course, enrolled, recruited, if they have issues with attendance, if we have to contact parents, all that stuff has to occur through our West-MEC folks, and because the community college doesn't do that. So with adding those 7 new programs, we also have an additional 5 concurrent enrollment programs already on the books. So that's going to give us 12. So there'll really be a split between kind of the north side and kind of the south side for those 2 individual people or positions, that they'll actually cover those concurrent programs. And we're going to continue to look and see if there's a way for us to be able to add more concurrent enrollment, because we believe that in some geographic spaces in our district, parents really like to see their students on that college campus with those college credits, even though you can get some of the same college credits at West-MEC as you can at the concurrent enrollment, but for some reason, being on campus actually makes a difference for some of those students and those parents. So those are the 2 partner program managers we're looking or recommending that we hire in order to supervise and manage the 12 programs that we have in current enrollment. The second green that everybody's had a chance to look at, we have 4 major projects going on, and they're all ramping up kind of at a different rate. Typically, districts will go out and hire what they call a project manager outside of the actual school district to pay that person to come in and manage the projects of the district. My philosophy is I'd rather, if we're going to spend money on our folks, so that we can actually have a person from West-MEC overseeing those projects to make sure that we're always getting back the right information and timely information about the projects. So my proposal in the second addition would be to allow Matt Heath, our current facilities director, to spend 70 to 80% of his time managing projects of our 4 projects, and then hire a facilities manager to take over many of the day-to-day operations. So it would allow Matt to, and number 1, get experience. Number 2, allow us to use our money to be able to pay for that project lead for our 4 major projects that are going on. I think the rest of it we've all talked about. I think you know where we stand on that. But I just think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to move some of the duties and responsibilities under Stephen's former position to allow that to align specifically to how our district has grown, because we weren't the same West-MEC we were 10 years ago. And I think this really balances it out to be able to give the responsibilities in the appropriate places with the right connections to be able to continue the great work that we do here at West-MEC.
All right. Well, I guess I should ask for a motion first before we have discussion. Is there a motion? As presented, something? I'll move it.
Reorganization plan as presented.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? All right, moved and seconded. Now I'll open it up for discussion. Comments?
Just talk.
Do we really need 4 assistant superintendents? It just seems very top heavy to me. I think we need to be pouring more money into our classrooms, like new programs, teachers and staff. It's all high paying jobs and stuff like that, and nobody at the bottom to hold it all up. And that's what I'm seeing.
I think prior to me coming in, it used to look like that, but CJ, you may have a better history than I do. You probably give a better version of what it looked like before. Actually, John Mulcahy was still here and Jack Herb was still here. It looked more like this than what it did before.
Yeah, I asked for the structure so that I could compare, and of course I didn't get that either.
we had prior to, we had an associate superintendent, two assistant superintendents, business, or administrator for the business office, and then a director of business development and government affairs. So really on that top line, there were 5 positions. We had some retirements that took place, and I think with the through the superintendent search and onboarding of a new superintendent, the board opted to hold off on making any hiring decisions or refilling some of those positions till the new superintendent had a chance to come in and really evaluate the structure, the organizational chart, and make those decisions that met his vision.
That's what I recall from the superintendent search. I think the thing I asked you, Dr. Spurgeon, if you could just reiterate, is comparing to other member districts, how many, what does their structure look like? How many assistant superintendents?
I can't tell you district by district, but typically the larger the districts, the more you would see 4 and 5. Those individual positions in place. Obviously, the smaller districts, you might see 1 or 2. As the district is as large as ours with 47,000, to me, it's not unreasonable for outreach for those students.
Questions, comments?
So the cost for this, there's not much of a difference, correct?
No, it's actually a cost savings or at least an abatement of the cost for us collectively, because I think there's a financial piece that you saw attached to this item, and the 7 new programs would generate $340,000+ of new money. And then I took the salary range of the facility manager position and about 70 or 80% of what Mr. Heath makes now, and it worked out to be about a $35 difference in the two numbers of what that would actually wash out to be. Mr. Heath's salary, if he moves to the projects, will be taken out of bond issue money, because you can do that now as long as he's working on the projects based on whatever time that he's there. We had some cost savings with some reductions in positions and the elimination of a position, not talking people, but of positions. And then the cost savings of about $72,000 of not having to pay a full benefit, full paid CEO position this current school year. So that money actually continues to move into M&O for 24-25. So in essence, my job is not only to have programs, but also find ways to pay for it. It's rare that you'll see me bring something to the board unless it just has to be that way, that I can't at least be able to add programs, add students to find the funding in either reductions in pay or reorganization of pay or increasing programs to pay for what I'm asking you to approve. And we believe the cabinet, we've had multiple conversations. Anyone affected in this organizational change have all had their conversations. It's not going to be if the board approves and afterwards people can say, wait a second, I didn't know. Everybody's had a conversation, they know where, and we believe in what we're doing. So it's been a kind of a wide net we've thrown out there to kind of see what was West-MEC of yesteryear in structure and organization. What is West-MEC looking like now and 5 and 10 years down the road? Because as I think was mentioned earlier, we're going to continue to grow. And it's going to be my absolute mission and goal is for us to continue to add as many programs that are appropriate for West-MEC to ensure that we allow the most number of students to access our programs. And this does that.
And as we get those campuses up and running, those other ones, obviously it's going to impact and change this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I heard CJ correctly, you said that 3-4 years ago, we had 2 superintendents, assistant superintendents, and 3 directors. What, 3 directors?
There was an
Associate.
An associate superintendent, which was Dr. Herb. We
Okay.
had 2 assistant superintendents in Mr. Welch and Dr. Mulcahy. We had an administrator for business services, which at the time was Barbara Thompson. We had a director of business development and government affairs, my predecessor, Dr. Ison.
That's 5 roles.
Before that was Diane McCarthy, and also you left off Cliff Michael was an associate superintendent and consulting, and so we've had.
So we're leaner now.
We've had a little bit of,
Than we were then.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've grown since then, since it's been 4 or 5 years since then.
And we will continue to grow, Mr. Chairman. One of the things we do as a board, kind of talking to the new guy here, is we hire a superintendent, then he recommends a staff. And you heard all kinds of accolades earlier. You'll keep hearing it. This district is full of accolades because it's full of talent, most of it sitting out there in the audience. And it's our job to support what the superintendent's doing, or we don't have that superintendent. That's how it works. And to this date, I'm impressed with what we've been able to do in 3 years. I'm impressed that the growth is ahead. Later on tonight, I promise to go easy on the go round. I do have something I want to say. And that's about what we need to be doing as a board. But we have a recommendation for him to run the ship. Now, if he doesn't run it well, that's not good. But everything I've seen in the past 3 years is outstanding. These accolades that are in here didn't happen by accident. They didn't. I even understand some of your comments about hiring within. I do. But sometimes it's better not to. You go for the best person. And I'll let you respond. Sometimes it's good to bring some new blood in. And that infusion can be very good for an organization. So we have a plan. What we've been doing is done a good job. I expect this to do an even better job. So I'd like to call for the question. I'll be glad to discuss the other issue with you afterwards.
Can I make one comment? There is one typo in the salary piece that Ms. Meggs want to make sure that you see the right numbers, so she didn't want to vote on the wrong number. There was a typo in that highlighted there.
The other thing I would just add is it's very common in the private sector. When I was at American Express, we had reorganizations, seemed like almost annually.
Yeah, you're right.
Because things change and we have not, and I've only been here for 17 years. And this is the first time I remember any kind of significant org change, which needs to happen. And I hope it's not 17 years before we have another one. You should have one every couple of years. Things change, new campuses come on.
It has to be that way.
And so I would just say it's about time. And you are correct. It's always good to bring in fresh new blood because people come in with new ideas from different areas and it's okay to have turnover. In fact, some turnover is good. Let our ideas go to other organizations. So that would be my 2 cents.
But you gotta look at the stalls, the whole picture. What we're doing is terrific. Did you hear those folks from Wickenburg? Did you hear the folks from 77% of the kids are involved with CTE? Those are terrific. And did you see the enthusiasm which they delivered? I mean, I love it when they bring kids. You all know that. People have been here for a while. But we are doing a good job. And if this will help facilitate and streamline the organization, I'm okay. So I'm ready to vote with an amendment to include this.
And do you accept a second with the?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion over here, Ms. Bosom, Barbara, Juan?
No.
I just think, we just had this, we approved something last month for the hiring range. And now we have this and it's upped again. And we also have to bear in mind that these are only hiring ranges. They're not what our employers are actually making because they're not capped out. So they could be a lot more than what this is here.
But if an employee moves, you wanted to say something, Ms. Mays?
I was just gonna address some concern. The reason that we are presenting the correction is when we added the executive director classification on there. When it was reprinted, it reprinted the old higher range, but the 78, whatever that is what you approved at the last meeting. So that's why I wanted to make sure you had the correct.
Chairman, I call for the question.
I hear no more discussion, so Ms. Brown, can you roll it out? Is anyone bringing a vote?
Not yet.
Oh, I thought I was slowed down.
No, my mouse is broken and I apologize. So there, and I'm clicking it 5 times and it's.
No, my mouse is back.
Mouse ran across my driveway this morning.
Excuse me?
You really did? Oh, yeah. I found it. That one was big. In my side yard. I saw it, and I was gonna get it the next morning, but something came along and got it in the middle of the night.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on. My favorite topic.
Oh, I want to be an ASBA delegate.
Oh, good. We'll take that. Jim has volunteered to go to the September meeting. He will be there for about 14
It
hours.
won't show up, I guarantee you.
14 hours. 14 hours is a short day. They have, so just to give you a little bit of history. Every year, ASBA asks for a political agenda. We submit something and it goes to the meeting that Jim's gonna spend the day at as the political, as our delegate, but they ask for the things and then they synthesize it to what they're gonna go to the legislature for. So the 3 things in yellow are what we, I believe, sent last year. And the only other item I would ask the board to add is because we are a district of choice. ASBA doesn't support ESAs, but we need ESAs for our students for funding. And actually, I was just meeting with not CJ, Garrett and Stephen, and they mentioned that Bourgaid High School has told their students or their parents, we get the ESA money before any other organizations. And so there is now a challenge with getting our ESA money from other partner districts and so forth. So I would ask that we could add a 4th bullet point about support of ESAs for districts of choice like West-MEC, and I would just defer to staff to come on with the right wording. But that's kind of what this agenda item is, and I would ask for the 3 items in yellow as well as the ESA statement for ASBA. Any discussion?
I was gonna say, do you think they will advocate for that?
Probably not.
Well, so I think the board has seen my emails back and forth with
Yeah.
the executive director where they basically said, hey, submit what you want, but we're gonna do what we want. We don't think it's important, but at least if we say this supports CTEDs and we're a public school in a district of choice and need ESAs, maybe they'll hear us.
And at least it's in writing.
And it's in writing. I mean, that's all we can do. But it's important to advocate for West-MEC. Pardon me?
And it really doesn't make any difference whether we go to that meeting. It's on there, you're submitting.
Yep, and that's all we can do. And we'll just rely, if it doesn't make it through, it will be because Jim didn't attend. So are you guys good with that? That would be my motion if someone would second it. Second, all right.
And say my one.
It's second by Juan or Linda, either one, they were.
Yeah, Linda.
Linda. All right, any other discussion?
Mr. Straka, could I introduce? Oh, someone in a minute, when you get done.
Yep.
Regina.
Yep.
I said, Linda seconded.
Second, at the end, when we get done with the future agenda items.
And then, in addition to, you have 1, 2, 3, and then 4 regarding ESAs to be written by staff and authorize, board secretary Louisa Brown to submit the priorities online.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone here for been through the conversation from the priorities are determined?
Several years ago, I was part of that committee. There was 70 people in the room. And there was a lot of talking, but we didn't really vote on anything. And then afterwards in September, they came out with the recommendations. So I spent 2 meetings in June, July to go to that. And it was a room full of people they talked, but it didn't really change the process.
Well, I shouldn't say it in public, but they've been discombobulated for a number of years. And unfortunately, the person they put in charge, that Ellen White, she's the best person they've had in charge for years. She's actually very good.
Motion carried.
All right.
All right.
So future agenda items, Dr. Spurgeon, you wanted to introduce somebody related to, they'll be presenting to the board later?
No, I want to introduce the new administrative assistant, Julie Yeager. This is say hi. So I can formally introduce Julie. She'll be taking over for Jared and the fair for system. So Julie Yeager, welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You want to say a word or two?
Absolutely. Esteemed board, I appreciate the opportunity to serve and lead with West-MEC. It has been a pleasure to briefly get to know the leadership here already. I have a fond place in my heart for West-MEC. I come from Colorado, and we partnered with West-MEC several years ago to build an innovation campus in my previous district. In fact, that partnership continues as they continue to build a second campus. So I have a strong appreciation for the amazing work that happens here, and just really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
We would just do that. It's a new board member.
Oh, I introduced him. I'm sorry, but yeah, Mr. Edward Molina has been appointed by, and I mentioned him at the study session, and I forgot to introduce you at the beginning. He has been appointed to fill the vacancy of Dr. Pingarelli. And he'll be through the end of the year, and then you get to run for election in November. And gather some signatures, which is.
Oh, that's a lot of fun.
But welcome, and I believe you're having your training on Tuesday. Very good. Future agenda items.
You've heard this from me before, but you know, board's responsibility is to set policy procedure, but also to plan for the future. And I am seriously concerned about the fact that we are not looking at a bond issue coming up. I know you're not in favor, and that's okay.
I didn't, when did I say I was not in favor of it?
When you whispered that, no, I just kidding. But at any rate, we need to think down, you all know I'll be off the board here by the end of the year, but we need to be looking at it now. We need to be acquiring property. We need to look at programs. We need to think about new programs. You know, those numbers, Ms. Rodriguez hit it right on the head. We get paid by the number of kids. It's that simple. You can add, subtract, put a 0.1, 0.2, 1.3, but we get paid the number of kids. So we need to be ahead, not behind. So I would really like to see us start thinking about future bond issue, what we can do in different areas, where we should be. That semiconductor, have you been out there lately? 100,000 homes from 17 down to Bell Road, around that northwest section. That's a lot of kids. A lot of homes. But we have a responsibility to start thinking now. That's all. Thank you.
Or start working on that too.
And this is all for our new school. Yeah, I agree.
And beyond.
And beyond. Oh, yeah. See, I like to think globally. That's what a board should be doing, not, you know, focusing in on something minor. But we need to, that's what our job is, to look to the future. Make sure that we have the facilities, the people, the programs, the organization, and the money to do what we need to do. Hell, I'd love to see us have a program for the people that live in our community to pay for those schools. What's wrong with having a computer class? Open up some night, you know, for first 50 that sign up, teach them how to use their computer, how to get it fixed, where to go. I did that For you, those of you who don't know, I was a shop teacher back before dirt was invented. And we had a night where the parents came in with their kids. They used the equipment. Man, does that play well in Peoria? Where you put out, schools are theirs, come on in and use them. And my final dream, and it was spurred again by the Wickenburg fellow out there with his restaurants and his catering and his what was the name of the nutrition classes and all that? I would love to see us, we're the 5th largest city in the country now. I don't want to just see another nutrition program. I'd like to see a standalone building that we would beat the general contractors up for money to build, that's class, that's state of the art. And we have a culinary program that is the best in the nation. Not good, or we can turn out kids for Arby's or Burger King. But we could have a class act, the top of the rainbow. You want kids to work at your fine restaurants? You go over to West-MEC. Thank you for your time.
Well, going back to what we spoke about earlier, I do want to look at our recruitment of how we internally develop our people, our teachers and our instructors. I do believe in it. I know, like even with well, the state doesn't do it, but a lot of companies, to include some of the municipalities, have internal positions and external positions for a reason. And you develop them, you get them to stay. Most people that work jobs don't want to leave, but they leave because of bad treatment, bad opportunities, stuff like that, or for personal life decisions, stagnant work. So I do believe that a person that puts forward a career decision to work at West-MEC should be able to retire from this. If the career path is correct and their benefit to the organization only grows, to include their loyalty to the work. So whatever we can do to talk about that, I would like to do a deep dive at some point of what we can do to retain our talent, skills, and abilities.
Yeah, I'd like to see at least like a 10% growth in that area. You know, I don't think that's too much to ask.
So we're talking about agenda items, we're getting dangerously close to discussing a topic. As much as we'd all love to, I'm just trying to keep us on the right topic. Maybe as part of that, we could also learn about West-MEC Youth, because that's a development tool we have. But we're just future agenda items. I'd love to talk more, but you know, I want to make sure we stay. There's a law. There's a law, just that minor little detail.
You have discussed the location for the restaurant?
No. So I have a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did Matthew give you a good tip at the Last Supper?
Yes, and don't talk to Frank, you'll never get ahead.
No future agenda.
Okay, no other future agenda items. I do recruitment, training and development.
And looking for land, the next.
Chief, we only do
Less than 10,000.
we only do
Less than 10,000.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. I unplugged you.
It was a good meeting.
You're a board member. The district can buy something from a board member that's less than 10,000 or that's not over 10,000.
That just blows me away. This is not the first time it's happened.